looks like we're streaming with display. 'Cause for some reason my OBS can't capture World of Warcraft. I just get like a black screen. So
It's time to sit
behind
back with your
the scenes with my one monitor.
The Moonweed by Hal Vincent.
The Moonweed.
Unwittingly the traitor of Earth, Van pits himself against the inexorably tightening web of plant.
Oh, come on.
He is released from the web.
Oh, come on.
Hobart Madison pursed his lips in a whistle of incredulous surprise.
Alright,
as he
attempt
regarded
two.
the object lay in the palm of his hand. An ordinary pebble, it seemed to be, but a pebble in which a strange fire smouldered and showed itself here and there through the dull surface. Would you mind repeating what you just said, Van? He asked. You heard me the first time. I said that's a diamond, and it came from the moon. Carl van der Venter glared at his friend in resentment of his doubting tone. You mean to tell me you've been there? To the moon? Well, certainly not. I'm not a Jules Verne adventurer. But I'm telling you that stone is a diamond of the first water, and that it came from the moon. Weighs over 100 carats, too. You can have it appraised yourself if you think I'm kidding you. Bart Madison just laughed. Don't get sore, Van, he said. I'm not doubting your word, but, Lord, man, the thing's so incredible. It takes a little time to soak in. And you say there are more? Sure. This one's the largest of 5 I've found so far. And there's other stuff, too. Wait till you see.
I always gotta check. Am I muted or not?
Beetles and things. I tell you, Bart, the moon was
I need
inhabited
like
at one time.
a sound enabler to know when
the
I mute
evidence.
and unmute
You get
myself.
to be the first to see it.
OBS.
The eyes of the young scientist shone with excitement as he saw that his friend was roused to intense interest. So that's what all your experimenting has been aimed at. No wonder it costs so much. Yeah, and you've been a brick for financing me. Never asked a question either. But Bart, it'll all come back to you now. You know how much that stone's worth? Ah, plenty, I guess, but forget about the financing and all that. Where's this laboratory of yours? Madison had pushed his chair back from his desk and was reaching for his hat.
He's
Over in the
reaching for his
remarkable mountains,
cock.
Not far from
Get him.
Tuxedo. I'll have you there in 2 hours. Sure you can spare the time to go out there now? Van der Venter was enthusiastically eager. Spare the time? Well, you just try and keep me from going. Neither of them noticed the sinister figure that lurked outside the door which led into the adjoining office. They chatted excitedly as they passed into the outer hall and made for the elevator. Van der Venter's laboratory was a small dome structure set in a clearing atop the mountain and well hidden from the winding road which was the only means of approach. Though Bart Madison, who had inherited his father's prosperous brokerage business, had financed his friend's research work ever since the two had left college, this was his first visit to the secluded workshop, and its wealth of equipment was revealed to him as a complete surprise. He'd always thought of Van's experiments as something beyond his ken, something uncanny and mysterious. Well, now he was convinced. The most prominent single piece of apparatus in the laboratory was a 12-inch reflecting telescope which reared its lattice framework to a slit in the dome overhead. Paralleling its axis and secured to the same equatorial mounting was a shining tube of copper which bristled with handwheels and levers and was connected by heavy insulated cables to an amazing array of electrical machinery that occupied an entire side of the single room. Ah, a regular young observatory you got here, Van, Bart commented, when he'd taken all of this in one sweeping glance of appraisal. Yeah, and then some. Not another like it in the world. Van was busying himself with the controls of his electrical equipment, and a powerful motor generator started up with a click and a whir as he closed a starting switch. Madison watched in silence as the swift-fingered scientist fussed with the complicated adjustments of the apparatus, and then turned to the massive concrete pedestal on which his telescope was mounted. At his touch of a button, the instrument swung over on its polar axis to a new position. The slit in the dome was open to the afternoon sky, revealing the lunar disk in its daytime faintness. "Oh, you can see it just as well in the daylight?" Bart asked as his friend peered through the eyepiece of the telescope and continued his adjustments. "Oh, sure. The surface is just as bright as at night. Doesn't seem so to your eye, but it's different through the telescope. Here, take a look." Bart squinted through the eyepiece and saw a huge crater with a shadowed spire in its center. Like a shell hole in soft earth, it appeared. A great splash that congealed immediately as it was made. The crosshairs of the eyepiece were centered on a small circular shadow near its inner rim. "That," Van was saying, "is a prominent crater near the Mare Nubium. The spot under the crosshairs is that from which I've obtained the diamonds, and other things. Watch this, Bart." The young broker straightened up and saw that his friend was removing the cover from a crystal bowl that was attached to the lower end of the copper tube that would point it to the heavens at the same ascension and declination as the telescope. The air of the room vibrated to a strange energy when he closed a switch that lighted a dozen vacuum tubes in the apparatus that lined the wall. "You say you bring the stuff here with a light ray?" he asked. "No, set with the speed of light. The tube projects a ray of vibrations, like directional radio, And this ray is a component that disintegrates the object it strikes and brings it back to us as dissociated protons and electrons, which are reassembled in the original form and structure in this crystal bowl. Here, watch." A misty brilliance filled the bowl's interior. Intangible, shadowy forms seemed to be taking shape within a swirling maze of ethereal light that hummed and crackled with astounding vigor. Then, abruptly, the apparatus was silent and the light gone, revealing an odd object that had taken form in the bowl. "A starfish," Bart gasped. "Yeah, fossilized." Van handed it to him, and he took it in his fingers gingerly, as if expecting it to burn. Oh, the thing was undoubtedly a starfish, and of light, spongy stone. Its color was pale blue, and the ambulacral suckers were clearly discernible on all 5 rays. "Lord, you're sure this is from the moon?" Bart turned the starfish over in his hand and gazed stupidly at his friend. "Certainly it is. You think I had it up my sleeve? But here, watch again. There's something else." The crackling, misty light again filled the bowl. Suppose, Bart ventured, you bring in something large, big as a house. What would it do to your machine?" "Well, I can't. The ray will only pick up stuff that'll enter the bowl. Oh, look, here's the next arrival." The mysterious light died down, and the scientist picked up the second object with trembling fingers. It was a knife of beautiful workmanship, fashioned from obsidian, obviously the work of human hands. "There, didn't I tell you?" Van gloated. "Guess that shows there were living beings on the moon." He made minute changes in the adjustment of his marvelous instrument, and Bart watched in dazed astonishment as object after object materialized before their eyes. There were fragments of strange minerals, more fossils, marine life mostly, a roughly beaten silver plate, 3 diamonds, none of which was as large as what Van had taken to New York, but all of considerable value. "Well, this will be something for the papers, Van." Bart Madison was visioning the fame that was to come to his friend. "Oh yeah, all but the diamonds." "All but the diamonds is right." These words were spoken by a sarcastic voice, chill as an icicle, that came from the open door. They wheeled to look into the muzzles of 2 automatic pistols that were trained on them by a stocky individual who faced them with a twisted, knowing grin. "Man, Kelly," Bart gasped, raising his hands slowly to the level of his shoulders. He knew the ex-army captain was a dead shot with a service pistol, and a desperate man since his disgrace and forced resignation. "What's the big idea?" he demanded. "You don't need to ask. Refused me a loan this morning, didn't you?" Now I'm getting it this way. Kelly turned savagely on Van, prodding his ribs with the pistol. Hey, get him up, he snapped. Van had been slow in raising his hands, gaping in stupefied amazement at the intruder. Now he reached for the ceiling without delay. Oh, you'll serve time for this, Danny, Bart shouted. Shut up. I know what I'm doing. And back up to to the other door. Kelly was forcing him toward the door of the cellar at the point of one pistol as he kept Van covered with the other. Bart clenched his fist and brought it down in a sudden sweeping blow that raked Kelly's cheek and ear with stunning force. But the gunman recovered in a flash, dropped the muzzle of his pistol and pulled the trigger. Drilled through the thigh, Bart staggered through the open door and fell the length of the stairs into the darkness of the cellar.
Now the Alliance got the
Kelly
horde
then
boss.
laughed
We're not going to be
evilly
able to get
as he
this,
slammed
but
the door and turned.
let's see the honor actually. Like 1
Hey,
point,
hold
I
it,
mean
you.
2.5 at
He
least or
snarled
higher.
as he swung on Van, who dropped his hands and crouched for a spring. If I drill you, it won't be through the leg. Oh, I'll take those diamonds now. He pocketed one of his pistols and, keeping the other pressed to the pit of Van's stomach, went through his pockets. Then he added those on the tray by the crystal bowl to his collection.
I think they wiped
And
actually. I don't
transferred
see
the
it
entire
anywhere on
lot to his
Captain.
own pocket. Now, you clever engineer, he grinned. We'll just operate this trick machine of yours for a while and collect some more. You, get to it. He watched narrowly as Van stretched his fingers to the controls. And no monkey business either, he grated. You'll not change a single adjustment. I've been listening to you, and I know the clock of the telescope is keeping the ray trained on the same spot. You just operate that ray and nothing else, understand? Well, Van didn't think it expedient to tell him of the
I
drift
feel like
caused
mages
by
are just
inaccuracies
like
in the
nowadays
clock
very
and
retarded or
perturbations
something.
of the
Like,
moon's motion.
why the
He was
fuck is
playing
none
for
of these
time,
guys kiting?
trying to plan a course
Anyone,
of
even
action.
hunters, warlocks. We're just gonna sit here and fucking wait till we
They may
lose.
not
Like,
need any more
this
diamonds.
guy at least has
He
some
offered as he
balls.
tripped the release
God
of the
damn. That's like
Oh,
actually
there'll
so
be
the
more.
most annoying part of
Don't
like
try and
rushing
kid
North
me.
Strat is like the incompetent
Finna regular
mages
block
and every
of
like
quartz
other ranged
material
DPS
in
out
the
there
bowl.
like not doing their
Kelly
job.
tossed it to the
It's
floor in
crazy.
savage disgust. Then a small diamond, very small, but he pocketed it nonetheless. The next object was a strange one, a dried seed pod about 6 inches in length and a brilliant red color. The ray had shifted to a new position on the lunar surface. Another and another of these strange legumes followed, one of them bursting open and scattering its contents. Bright red like the enclosing pod rattled over the floor like tiny glass beads. Kelly just snorted his disgust. Oh, still some sort of vegetation out there, Van muttered. The eternal scientist in the man could not be downed by a mere hold-up. Can the chatter? Kelly snarled as the crystal bowl gave up another of these useless pods, and yet another. He gathered up the evidence of lunar vegetation, a half-dozen of the pods, and threw them through the open doorway with a savage gesture. Are you trying to put one over on me? He bellowed. Well, how can I? Van retorted mildly. I haven't touched a hand wheel. He was wondering vaguely whether this lunar seed would grow in the earthly soil. What sort of a plant it would produce under the new environment. But Kelly was becoming nervous now. It seemed that little was to be gained by hanging around this crazy man's laboratory. He had a sizable fortune in rough stones already. That big one alone, when properly cut into smaller stones, would make him independently wealthy. Maybe there weren't any more anyway, and the longer he stayed, the greater chance there was of getting caught. The advent of another of the pods decided it for him. A quick blow with the butt of his pistol stretched Van on the floor, and Kelly fled the scene. Bart was pounding furiously on the cellar door when Van first took hazy note of his surroundings. Several uncertain minutes had passed before he was able to stagger across the room and release his friend. Where is he? Bart demanded, swaying on his feet and blinking in the sudden light. Gone. Suck me, and beat it with the diamonds. Van was mopping the blood from his eyes with a handkerchief. "Oh, are you hit bad?" he inquired. "No, just a flesh wound. Hurts like the devil, though. How about you?" Bart limped to his side and sighed with relief when he examined his bleeding scalp. Not so bad yourself, old man. Hey, where's your first aid kit? Van was still somewhat dazed and merely pointed to the cabinet.
Forgot I was
Fine
not
pair we
muted.
turned out to be. He grumbled after his head had cleared a bit under Bart's vigorous cleansing of the cut on his temple. Here we stood, meek as a couple of lambs, let that guy get away with murder. Yeah, but those 45s made the difference. Oh! Bart winced as his friend poured fresh iodine over the wound in his leg. God, have a heart, will you? They were startled into silence by a hoarse, strangled scream that came from outside the laboratory. "Help! Help!" someone repeated in a panicky voice, a voice which at once ended on a gurgled note of despair. "It is Kelly," Bart whispered. "He's come back. Something's happened to him." He then started for the open door. "Hey, wait a minute. Might be a trick to get us outside where he can pop us off." "Oh, no. It isn't. Oh, for God's sake. Look at that." Bart had reached the door and was pointing at the ground with shaking forefinger. The entire clearing seemed to be alive with wriggling things, long rubbery tentacles that crawled along the ground, reaching curling ends high in the air, and had even started climbing the trees at the edge of the clearing. Blood red they were, and partially transparent in the light of the setting sun. Growing things, attached by their thick ends to swelling mounds of red that seemed anchored to the ground. Translucent stalks rose from the mounds and sprouted huge buds that burst and blossomed into flaming flowers a foot in diameter, then withered and went to seed in a moment of time. But always the weaving tendrils shot forth with lightning, reaching and feeling their uncanny way along the ground and into the woods. One of them emerged from a hollow stump with its slender end coiled around the tiny body.
I don't even trust these players. I'm just gonna wait this fucking tower up.
God, the moonflowers, Van cried.
What the fuck?
What do you mean, moonflowers? Dried seed pods. They came over into the bowl, and Kelly threw them out. Oh, God, now look at the damn things. They're alive. Kelly's voice came to them once more from behind the barrier of rapidly growing vegetation. "Help," he screamed. "I'll give back the diamonds, anything. Just get me away from these things." "Oh, we ought to just let them get him," Van growled. Bart shivered. Too horrible, Van. Hey, got an axe or anything?" "Yeah, there's a hatchet around the back. Maybe we can..." But the young broker had already scuttled around the corner of the building, and Van looked after him anxiously. The vile red tendrils were reaching the east wall of the laboratory, and he saw that their inner surfaces were covered with tiny suckers like those of the arms of a devilfish. Carnivorous plants, undoubtedly, these awful half-animal, half-vegetable things whose seed had been transported across 250,000 miles of space. Man-eaters, deadly, and growing with incredible speed. Not even the short-lived flowers were fearsome, as they opened their scarlet, pansy-like faces and stared a moment before they folded up and shriveled into the seed cases like those that had materialized in the crystal bowl. Then he noticed that the pods were opening and spreading more of the terrible seeds. Nothing could stop this weird growth now. It would cover the country like a sea of flaming horror, overcoming and devouring every living thing. Cold fear clutched at Van as he realized the enormity of the calamity that had come to the earth. Bart was skirting the edge of the clearing with a hatchet in his hand, and Van tried to call out to him, to warn him. But his voice caught in his throat, and instead he ran to his assistance, circling the spreading menace to get around behind where Kelly was still shouting. Oh, damn Kelly, anyway. This never would have happened if he hadn't come on the scene. Kelly was in the woods now, wedged into the crotch of a tree and striking wildly at the clutching tendrils with his club pistol. They mashed easily and were dripping red, but were not to be deterred from their ghastly purpose. Kelly's time would have indeed been short, had not his erstwhile victims come to the rescue. One of the thickest of the twining things encircled his body and had him pinned to the tree. His breath was coming in gasps as its tightening coils increased their pressure. His coarse features were livid, and his eyes bulged from their sockets. Bart hacked and hacked at the rubbery growth until he had him free, jerked him from his perch, blubbering and whining like a schoolboy. His shirt had been torn from his breast, and they saw a great welt where the blood had been drawn through the pores by those terrible suckers. "Oh, look out, Bart!" Van shouted. Another of the creeping things had come through the underbrush and was wrapping its coils around Bart's ankle. Another and another wiggled through, and soon they were battling for their own freedom. Kelly staggered off into the woods and went crashing down the hill, leaving them to take care of themselves as best they might. The stench of the viscous liquid that oozed from the injured tendrils was nauseous. It had something of a soporific effect, and the two friends found themselves fighting the terror in a growing mist of red that blinded and confused them. And then, miraculously, they were free, and Van assisted Bart as they ran through the forest. When they reached the road, weak and out of breath, they were just in time to see Kelly's roadster vanish around the bend. Yeah, he'd give back the diamonds. What an ass, Van muttered vindictively. Then, shrugging his shoulders, well, they won't be much good to him anyway. Won't be any good to us either, as far as that goes. What do you mean? Aren't they real? Bart was raising himself painfully into the seat of Van's car, his wounded leg suddenly very much in the way. Yeah, sure, they're real. But don't you realize what this thing means? This ungodly growth that started? Why, no. You mean it'll keep growing? Yep, and how? Those inner stalks drop a new batch of seeds every 5 minutes or so. And there you go. A flock of new plants spring up 10 feet from the first. Dozens of them for every pod that drops. Well, you know how geometrical progression works out. They'll cover the whole country. The whole world. God. Man alive. This is terrible. I hadn't thought of that before. What are we going to do? Yeah, that's the question. What can we do? Van started his motor and jerked the car to the road. Well, first off, we're going to get away from here, fast. Bart gripped his arm as he shifted into second gear. Oh, look, Van, he babbled. They're out of the woods already, loose. The red snakes are loose from their stalks. God damn it, they're alive, I tell you. And it was true. Several of the slimy red things were wriggling their way over the tarmac like great earthworms, but moving with the speed of hurrying pedestrians. Free and untrammeled by the roots and stems of the mother plants, they'd set forth on their own in search for beings of flesh and blood to destroy. Millions of their kind would follow. Billions. In sudden panic, Van stepped on the gas. 15 minutes later, with shrieking siren, a motorcycle drew alongside and forced them to the curb. Hey, where's the fire? The sarcastic voice of a stern-visaged officer demanded, when Van had brought his car to a screeching stop. 75, the speedometer had read, only a moment before. Look, it's life and death, officer, Van started to explain. We must get to the proper officials to warn them. Tell it to the judge. Come on now, you follow me. But officer, there's death on its way from the hills, I tell you. Red, creeping things that'll be here in a couple of hours. Move away from the wheel. I'll drive you in myself. Bart had opened the door on the side and was limping his way around the back of the car. This was serious. They had to get away. Had to spread the word in a way that would be believed before it was too late. The officer was tugging at Van's arm, astonishment and black rage showing in his weather-beaten countenance. Speeding, drunk, resisting an officer. They'd never get out of this mess. but a swift uppercut interrupted the proceedings. Bart's leg was numb and stiff, but his good right arm was working smoothly, and with all its old-time precision. His second punch was a haymaker. With his full weight behind it, it drove straight to the chin and stretched the officer on the concrete. Thoughtfully, Bart removed his pistol from its holster before scrambling in at Van's side. "Oh boy, we're in for it now," he gasped. "Well, we might as well make a good job of it while we're at it." Van let in his clutch with a jerk, and soon again they were breaking all traffic regulations. It was dusk when they roared in through the gate at the Rockland County Airport and pulled up at the hangar office. Van rushed in, shouting for Bill Peterson, and Bart followed. A slender, fair-haired youth in rumpled flying togs greeted them. "Bill, it's my friend, Bart Madison," Van blurted without pausing for breath. "Listen, you gotta have a plane right away. Got one with a radio?" "Yeah, but what's all the rush? Where are you going?" "Albany, right away. Make it snappy, will you?" "Sure, but what's it all about?" Young Peterson was leading them to the field where a sleek monoplane was in waiting, as if they'd ordered it. "Hey, warm her up, Joe," he called to the mechanic. "Listen, Bill, I never lied to you, did I?" Van asked, when they were seated in the plane's cabin. "Not that I know of, but sometimes I've thought you were lying, until I saw with my own eyes the things that you told me about. What is it this time?" "Death and destruction, coming down out of the Ramapos. We've got to warn the country. Plants, Bill. Squirmy red plants with long feelers that can twist around and devour a man. Half animal they are, and the feelers break loose and crawl by themselves, multiplying like nothing you ever saw. Millions of them in an hour." "What?" Peterson stared incredulously as his motor roared into life, and he gave his attention to the business of taking off. He jerked the thumb of his free hand toward the radio. Van's expert fingers manipulated the switches and dials of the portable apparatus, and its vacuum tubes glowed into life. 2BXX calling 2TIM, he droned into the microphone. "Who's that?" Bart asked. The drone of the motor was barely audible in the closed cabin and didn't interfere. "The Times. Trying to get Johnny Forbes. Well, if anyone can get this thing across, he can. Wait a minute, here they are." He closed his eyes as he listened to the murmuring voice in the headphones. Man, he was talking rapidly, forcefully, and the young flyer gazed with owlish solemnity at Bart as they listened to this conversation. And it was plain that Bill was only half inclined to believe, though impressed by the earnestness and evident apprehension displayed by his two passengers. "Yes, 2BXX, Van was saying. "Connect me with Johnny Forbes, please. Oh, in a hurry." "Yep. Hello, Johnny. It's Van. Carl Vanderventer, you know." "Yep. Got a scoop for you, but first I want you to get it in the broadcasts. Got me? It's about a man-eating plant that's starting to overrun the country. No, listen now. I'm not dreaming. I'm not making this up. Listen." The frantic scientist rambled on and on about the seed from the moon, the red death that was creeping down from the mountains, the horror of this calamity as he and Bart had visioned it. Then, with a sudden note of despair, his voice trailed off into nothingness, and he turned a drawn, white face to his two friends. "Laughed at me. Hung up on me," he groaned. "Oh, good God, we've got to do something, quick." "We'll be in Albany in an hour," the pilot suggested. "What you gonna do there?" He believed now. His expression of horror showed it. "See the governor, but man, it's an hour wasted. We must stir up the country, get the word to Washington everywhere. It might be possible to fight the thing some way if we could mobilize state and national resources quickly enough. Bill, Bart, what can we do?" The plane sped on through the night under control of her gyropilot as the three men racked their brains for a solution to the problem. If a hard-boiled newspaper man wouldn't believe the story, who would? "Oh, yeah, I've got it," Bart shouted suddenly. Can any of you pound a key... code, I mean. Sure I can. Then what? Peterson returned. Oh, fake an SOS, don't you see? All broadcasting has to stop, and every ship at sea, every airliner in this part of the country will be listening, standing by. Give them the story in code. I don't think we're in a ship from the moon. Captured by Lunarians, we're here to destroy the world with this weed of theirs. Anything. Make it as weird as possible. Most everyone will think it's a hoax. There are 10,000 kids, amateurs, they'll be listening in. Somebody will believe it, and believe me, there'll be some investigating in the neighborhood of the growth in no time. God, I believe that'll do it, Van exclaimed. And the broadcasters listen in for an SOS themselves. They got to, so they know when to start up again. Well, some smart announcer will tell the story, maybe even believe it. Yeah, the trick will work. Sure thing. The pilot glanced at his instruments and saw that the automatic gyro apparatus was functioning properly. Then he moved over to the radio and threw the switch that put the key in circuit instead of the microphone. Rapidly he ticked off the 3 dots, 3 dashes, and again 3 dots that spelled the dread danger signal of the air. Over and over he repeated the signal, and then he listened for results. It worked, he gloated after a moment. They're all signing off, the broadcasters. The Navy Yard in Brooklyn gives me the go-ahead. He then pounded out the absurd message with swift fingers, pausing occasionally to ask a pertinent question of Van or Bart. At Van's request, he added a warning to all residents of New York State, west of the Hudson River, and of northern New Jersey to flee their homes without delay. He even asked that the message be relayed to the governors of the 2 states, and that Governor Perkins of New York be advised that they were on their way to Albany to discuss the situation. But he balked at the story of the Lunarians, telling instead the equally strange truth regarding the origin of the deadly growth, and adding the names of Van and Bart to lend authenticity to the tale. Then he signed off and switched the radio receiver to the loudspeaker before returning to the pilot seat. Bart tuned in to the various broadcasters as they resumed their programs, finally settling on WOR Newark, whose announcer was reading the strange message to his radio public with appropriate comment. A crime and an outrage, he called it. An affront to the industry and to the public. An insult to the government of the United States. But wait. A telephone call had just been received at the station from the village of Sloatsburg. A reputable citizen of that town had reported the red growth at the edge of State Road. Huge red earthworms wriggling across the concrete. Another call, and then another. The announcer's voice was rising hysterically. Oh, it did work, Bart, Van exulted. And now the hell starts popping. Governor Perkins met them in person when they arrived at the municipal airport in Albany. A great crowd had gathered in the shadows outside the brilliance of the floodlights, and a police escort rushed them to the governor's private car. Oh, here's where you go to the Bastille for socking that cop, Van observed. His spirits had risen appreciably since that successful SOS call. The governor was, nonetheless, in a serious mood as they made their way to the executive mansion through the milling crowds that lined the hilly streets of the capital city of New York State. Proofs had not been lacking of the truth of Bill Peterson's radio warning. Although the spreading Red Death had covered a circle some 8 miles in diameter, covering farmlands and destroying the crops, blocking the roads and trapping many on the streets and in their homes in nearby towns. More than 100 had lost their lives, and thousands were fleeing the threatened area. The country was in uproar. Gentlemen, the governor said, when they'd reached the privacy of his chambers, this is a serious matter, and no time must be lost in dealing with it. Nevertheless, I want you, Mr. Vanderventer, to tell your story of the thing to me and to the radio system of the United States Secret Service. The President himself will be listening, as will the chief executives of most of the states. Hold nothing back, as the fate of our people is at stake. And so Van faced the microphone and related the history of his work in the little laboratory in the Ramapo Mountains. He told of his interest in the Earth satellite, and of his first unsuccessful experiments with ultra-telescopes in the endeavor to explore its surface close at hand, of the failure of a spaceship he'd built, of the final discovery of the ray, by means of which it was possible to transport solid objects from the one body to the other. He told of the discovery of man-made relics and of fossils. He told of the diamonds, and of the attack by Dan Kelly, which had resulted in the spreading of the seed of the deadly moonweed. He even related the incident of the traffic policeman, at which the governor smiled. "Yeah, that has been reported," he said, "and you need have no fear on that score. The charges will be dropped. I now ask that you give us your opinion as to the best method of combating this new enemy. Have you any ideas?" "I have not, sir," Van replied gloomily, "though I believe it can be done only from the air, possibly bombing or gas of some sort. I don't know, but it will take time, Mr. Governor." "Yes, and meanwhile the thing is overwhelming us at what rate?" "Well, as nearly as I can estimate it, the growth is moving with a speed of 4 or 5 miles an hour. So, by morning you expect it will have traveled 40 or 50 miles in all directions?" "Yeah, I'm afraid so." A sharp buzz from the instrument on the governor's desk interrupted them. "Oh, the president," he whispered. "That is enough, Governor," came the husky tones of President Alfred's voice. "I shall communicate with Secretary Markley at once. All available Army bombing planes will be rushed to the scene. You, sir, will mobilize the militia, as will the governors of the other states. Meanwhile, this young scientist is to report to the Bureau of Scientific Research in Washington tonight. Have him bring a supply of those seeds with him." And that was all. Governor Perkins offered no comment, but merely rose from his seat to indicate that the discussion was ended. A solemn silence reigned in the room. "Right, let's go," exclaimed Bill Peterson suddenly, unawed by the presence of the governor. "Well, my ship's waiting, and we can stop off for a couple of those pods and still make Washington in 2 hours. Come on." Governor Perkins smiled. "Good luck, boys," he said as they were ushered from the room. "My car will return you to the airport. And remember this. The country will be watching you now, and expecting much from you. Goodbye." Well, they were to recall his words in the dark days ahead. Before they'd reached Newburgh, they saw a dull red glow in the skies that told them the news broadcast to which they'd been listening had not exaggerated. The red growth was luminous in the darkness. Off there to the southwest, it was as if a vast forest fire were lighting the heavens. No wonder the panics and rioting were getting out of control of the police. Coming up over Bear Mountain, they caught their first glimpse of the sea of fire that was the Red Death by night. Like a vast bed of glowing embers, it covered the countryside, extending eastward to Haverstraw, where it was temporarily halted by the broad Hudson. It was a shimmering, undulating mass of living, luminous things, eating their horrible way through all organic matter that stood in their path. Writhing, squirming, all-absorbing monsters that sent out an advance guard of independent snake-like tendrils to capture and hold for the lagging mother plants whatever livestock and humanity they were able to find. "You, think they'll go over the river, Van?" Bart asked. "Well, sure they will. Every fugitive who had a narrow escape after being in contact with the things is a potential carrier of the seed. Found several of them sticking to my clothing after we got away. I picked a couple off your coat, but didn't tell you." "Lord, what'd you do with them?" "I put them in the ash receiver in my car, like a fool. Wouldn't have to go down for more if I kept them." "Well, it can't be helped now. We'll have a job getting some down there now, too." "Yeah, I'll say so." And then Van lapsed into gloomy silence. They were over the landing field above Tompkins Cove. Bill turned on the siren whose raucous shriek operated the mechanism of the floodlight switches by sound vibrations. The field sprang into instant illumination, and they circled it once before swooping to a landing. They were but a mile now from the advancing terror. The field was deserted, and the three men started off immediately in the direction of the oncoming weed. "Oh, we'll have to make it snappy," Van grunted. "We've got about 12 minutes to get the pods and get back to the ship. Those damn things will be here by that time." They scrambled over fences and pushed through thickets. The lighted windows of a deserted farmhouse were directly ahead, and they ran through the open gate and across the fields. Ever the glow of the weed growing brighter. A terrified horse galloped wildly past them and crashed into the fence, whinnying piteously as it went down with a broken leg. They could see the red rim of the advancing horror just beyond the road. One of the detached tendrils slithered past, each glowing coil distinctly visible. "Oh, lucky those things can't see," Bart shuddered. "Yep," said Van. "Have to dodge them to get in close enough to one of the plants. Keep your eyes peeled now, you fellas, in case one of us gets caught." A terrific explosion rocked the ground. They paid no heed to the roaring of motors overhead. The bombers were already on the job, shooting skyward. A column of flame not 100 yards from them showed where the high explosive had landed in the red mass. Then, slimy, wriggling things rained all about them, fragments of the red weed that still squirmed and crawled and clung. Bill Peterson yelled and clutched at his neck where one of the things had taken hold. Another warning whistle of a falling bomb. Crash! More of the horror raining down and splattering as it fell. Ooh, a huge blob of quivering, luminous jelly fell before them, a portion of one of the mother plants. "Run!" Van shouted. "Run for the plane. We'll never make it now. Oh, damn those bombers." All along the advancing front, the bombs were bursting, shattering the air with their detonations and scattering the glowing red stems and tendrils in all directions. The din was appalling, and the increasing brightness of the crimson glow added to the horror of the situation. Stumbling and cursing, they ran for the plane. "Fools! Fools!" Bill was shouting. "Can't they see the field and the plane? Why in the devil are they dropping them so near?" Then Bart was down, clawing at a 3-foot length of red tendril that had fallen on him and borne him to the earth. "Bart! Bart!" Van turned back and was tearing at the thing with fingers that were slippery with the sap that oozed from its torn skin. Oh, monstrous earthworms. Cut them apart and each portion lived on, took on new vigor. And these vile things could sting like a jellyfish. Where each sucker touched the skin, a burning sore remained. Bill helped them break away from the thing, and all three fought on toward the lights of the landing field. Only a short way off now, but it seemed that they would never reach it. The bombers were dropping their missiles with unceasing regularity, and the Red Death only spread the faster. When they scrambled into the cabin of the plane, the red wall of creeping horror was almost upon them. Advancing speedily out from the red-lit darkness, it seemed to halt momentarily when it emerged into the brilliance of the great arc lights which illuminated the field. And then, more slowly and with seemingly purposeful deliberation, the wriggling feelers reached out from the mass and bore down upon them. Bill slammed the door and latched it, then fumbled frantically with the starter switch. The most welcome sound was the answering roar of the motor. The pilot yanked his ship into the air, taking off with the wind rather than running the risk of remaining on the ground long enough to taxi around and head into it. The plane acted like a frightened bird as Bill struggled with the controls, darting this way and that, and once missing a crash by inches as the tail was lifted by the treacherous ground wind. And then they were clear, and slowly gained altitude in a steep climb. "Oh!" Van exclaimed, mopping his red-splattered forehead with his handkerchief. "That was a narrow escape, boys. And we haven't got the seeds yet, unless we can find a few on our clothing." "Ah, who said so?" Bart gloated. "Look at this." He then opened his clenched fist and disclosed one of the pods, unbroken and gleaming horribly scarlet in the dim light of the cabin. Bill heaved a sigh of relief as he banked the ship and swung around toward the south. He dreaded another landing near the sea of moonweed. Van chortled over their good fortune as he examined the mysterious pods. One good thing the bombers had done, anyway. Blow one of the things into his friend's hands. Bart and the young pilot found themselves very much out of the picture when they reported with Van at the research building in Washington. The government had no use for them in this emergency. It was a scientist they wanted, and he was immediately rushed into conference with the heads of the Bureau. His two friends were left to shift for themselves, and they joined the crowds in the street. The name of Carl van der Venter was on everyone's tongue. Cursing and reviling him they were, for the harebrained experiment which had been the cause of this terrible disaster. Ah, fools. Bart seethed with rage and nearly came to blows with a number of the vociferous agitators who were advocating a necktie party. Why hadn't the officials published the entire story as Van had told it over the Secret Service radio? There was no mention of Dan Kelly in the broadcast news, nor of the fact that the police were searching for him in every city and town in the country. Another instance of the results of secrecy in governmental activities. Well, we'd better find ourselves a room and turn in, Bart growled. Let's get out of this mob before I slam somebody. Bill Peterson was only too willing. He was suddenly very tired. In the Willard Hotel, they were assigned to an excellent room, and Bart insisted on switching on the broadcasts and listening to the news. Far into the night he sat by the loudspeaker, or paced the floor as an exceptionally calamitous happening was reported. But Bill slept through it all. The army bombers had been recalled. Their efforts had worked more harm than good. The invincible moonweed now had crossed the Hudson River at Nyack and Piermont. Tarrytown was overrun, and many of the inhabitants had lost their lives either in the maws of the insatiable monsters or in the panics and rioting that accompanied the evacuation of the town. New Jersey was covered as far south as New Brunswick, and west of Phillipsburg and Belvedere. At Mauch Chunk, the contents of 20 oil tanks had been diverted to the Delaware River, and the floating oil film was proving at least a temporary protection to a considerable portion of the state of Pennsylvania. In New York State, the growth had buried hill and valley, town and village, as far as Monticello, and along the Hudson extended as far north as Kingston. At Poughkeepsie, on the opposite side of the river, frantic householders had armed themselves with rifles and shotguns, and were killing off all refugees who attempted to land from boats at that point. But the militia was on guard at the bridges, assuring safe crossing to the thousands who fled the Red Death over these routes. There was no keeping the seed of the moonweed from finding its way east. At some points fire had been used with considerable success as a barrier, hundreds of acres of forestlands being destroyed in the endeavor to stem the crimson tide. But after the ashes would cool, germination would recur, and the weed would continue on its triumphant way. Acid sprays and poisonous gas of various kinds had been tried without appreciable effect. The casualty estimates already ran into the tens of thousands. Rumor had it that nearly 100,000 had lost their lives in the city of Newark alone. There was no way in which the figures could be checked while everything was in a state of confusion. Communication lines were broken, roads blocked, gas and electricity supply systems paralyzed, and the railroads were helpless. Trains could not be driven through the glutinous, wriggling mass that piled high on the tracks. Only the radio and the airlines were operative in the stricken area, and even these were of little value to the unfortunates who, in many cases, were surrounded and cut off from all hope of succor. 4 a.m, with aching heart and reeling brain, Bart threw himself on the bed without undressing, and fell into the troubled sleep of exhaustion and despair. The next day brought no encouragement, though it was reported that the growth developed with less rapidity after sunrise than it had during the night. Bart endeavored to get Van on the telephone, but was curtly informed by the operator at the research building that no incoming calls could be transferred to the laboratory where he was working. Knowing his friend, he pictured him as working feverishly with the government engineers and giving no thought to sleep or food. Well, he'd kill himself for sure, but such a death even was preferable to the red one of the moonweed. The Canadians and Mexicans had been quick to protect their borders and forbid the landing of any American aircraft or the passage of trains and automobiles. But the seed had reached Europe. One of the 12-hour night airliners having carried 1,000 refugees who had sufficient foresight and the means to engage passage. It was a world catastrophe that they faced. By mid-afternoon, the streets of Washington were almost deserted. It was less than 24 hours since the first moonseed had taken root, and already the crimson growth had progressed nearly 100 miles southward from the point of origin. Another 20 or 30 hours and it would reach the capital city, unless Van and those engineers over in the research building discovered something. A miracle. Bart tried the phone once more and was overjoyed when the operator, all apologies now, informed him that Van had been trying to reach him for several hours. "Listen, old man," his friend's voice came over the wire. "I've been worried as the devil, not knowing where you were. I want you and Bill to stick around where I can get you any time. I may need you. Where are you staying?" "The Willard. Have you doped out something?" Bart answered in quick excitement. "Well, maybe. Can't let anything out yet, until we've tested it thoroughly. But I can tell you that 100 factories are already working on machines that we've devised. By good luck, it only means minor changes to an apparatus that's already on the market in large quantity." Great stuff. Oh, the city's nearly emptied itself, you know. And boy, how they've been razzing you over the radio and in the papers, howling for your hide. The whole damn country. Yeah, I know. Van's voice was calm, but Bart sensed in it something of a cold fury that was new to him and his friend. The young scientist was bitterly resentful of the attitude of the public. "Can we see you, Van?" "No, don't call me either. Better hang around the hotel and wait for a call from me. Okay, so long for now, Bart. I gotta get busy." "So long." Bart then gazed solemnly at Bill Peterson, who'd been listening abstractedly to the one-sided conversation. Bill had given up hope and was resigned to the inevitable. Says he may need us, Bill," said Bart. "Yeah, well, we'll be ready for anything he wants us to do. It's no use, though. Not anything." "What do you mean, no use? You never saw Van licked yet, did you?" "Sure I did. I used super telescopes and that rocket ship." "Yeah, but this is different." Bart was a staunch defender of his friend. He glared at Bill for a moment and then switched on the news broadcast, which he knew he detested. The progress of the moonweed continued unabated. In the city of New York, 1 million souls were reported as having lost their lives, and this in spite of the difficulty experienced by the uncanny moonweed in obtaining a foothold in Manhattan. It had been thought that the asphalt and concrete would prove an effective barrier, and so they did, for a time. But with the seed active in the parks and along the waterfronts, it wasn't long before the powerful roots of the greedy plants worked their way underneath, ripping up pavements and wriggling into cellars as they progressed. The city was a mass of wreckage and a maelstrom of fighting and dying humanity. Entire regiments of the National Guard were wiped out as they fought off the weed with axe and bayonet, in the effort to provide time for the refugees to clear from their homes in certain localities. All transportation facilities to the south and west were taxed to the utmost. There was fighting and killing for the possession of automobiles and planes, and for rooms in trains and buses. Airline terminals and railroad stations were the scenes of dreadful massacres, as the police and military guards fought off the crazed and desperate creatures who attacked them en masse. And still, the news announcers prated of the responsibility of one Carl Vandeventer. The telephone bell rang, and Bart answered in relief. At last, they were to see some action. But no, it was merely the desk clerk, notifying him that all employees were leaving the hotel and that they would be left to shift for themselves. Yes, there was plenty of food in the kitchens, and they were welcome to it, and a permanent telephone connection would be made to their room. The frightened clerk then wished them the best of luck. In endless monotone, the voice of the news announcer droned on. Binghamton and Elmira, Albany and Schenectady, New Haven, Philadelphia, Allentown, all had succumbed. The casualty estimates now ran into the millions. Oh, the mist, the red mist that rose from the steaming weed, was drifting westward and spreading the seed with ever-increasing rapidity. For now, the monstrous growth from out of the sky was adapting itself to its environment, providing the seed with feathery tufts that permitted the winds to carry them far and wide like the seed of a dandelion. "Oh, turn off that damn thing," Bill shouted. And he jumped to his feet, his eyes glinting strangely in the twilight gloom of the room. Bill was close to the breaking point. I guess you're right," Bart mumbled. "Not good for either of us to listen to that stuff." He switched off the receiver, and they sat in silence as darkness fell over the city. Bill shivered and felt for the button of the electric light which he pressed with a trembling finger. They blinked in the sudden illumination, but it cheered them somewhat. It wasn't good to sit in the darkness and think. Besides, they knew that the turbine generators of Potomac Edison were still running. Some brave souls were sticking to their jobs, for the time being at least. "God," Bill suddenly groaned, after an endless time of dead silence. "My sister, she lives in Pittsburgh, you know. I wonder if she and the kids got away. God, it won't be long before the damn stuff gets there." Well, Bart thanked his lucky stars that he had no family ties. That's okay, they've had plenty of warning." He tried to console Bill. "Ours, you know, and the westbound lines are in good shape from there. I wouldn't worry about them too much if I were you." And then there was utter silence once more. Even the customary street noises were lacking. Both men jumped nervously when the shrill siren of a police motorcycle sounded in the distance. Bart thought grimly of his fracas with a police officer who'd tried to arrest Van. God, how long ago that seemed, and how inconsequential an incident. Their windows faced north, and by midnight they could make out the red glow of the moonweed, that awful band of flickering crimson that painted the horizon the color of blood. The telephone clamored for attention, and Bill stifled a hysterical sob as the terrifying sound broke the eerie stillness. Van was on the way to get them. He had a government car, and they were going to go to Arlington for Bill's plane. Well, then what? He refused to commit himself. They must follow him blindly. Anything was better than this inactivity, though. Bart shouted with glee. "We're going north," Van replied shortly, in answer to Bart's question when they entered the official car in front of the hotel. "After Dan Kelly." "After Dan Kelly? What, they got a line on him?" "Yep. Secret Service reports him in Toronto. The Canucks are after him now, but by God, I'm going to get him myself." Van was haggard and wan, his eyes gleaming with a fanatical light. The strain had done something to him, something Bart didn't like at all. This was a different Van from the man who had entered his office 2 days previously. Unshaven and unkempt, he looked and talked like a drunken man on the verge of delirium. "Okay, what's the idea, Van?" he asked gently. "I'm going to get him, I tell you. That scumbag. It's his fault the whole world's against me. I'll get him, Bart. I'll kill him with my bare hands." And so that was it. The combination of grueling labor and the effort to save mankind from the dread moonweed, and bitter censure from the very people he was trying to save. It had been too much for Van. He'd developed a fixation, unreasoning and murderous. He'd get even with the man who'd caused this trouble, and nothing could deter him from his purpose. Bart could see that. Might as well humor him and help him. Well, it made little difference anyway, with the red doom spreading at its present rate. They'd all be victims within a few days. They were speeding through the streets of Washington at a breakneck rate. Van bent over the wheel, and like a demented man glued his wildly staring eyes to the road. "What about your work?" Bart asked after a while. "Has anything been accomplished?" "Oh, yes and no. They'll be ready to shoot in a few hours. Don't know whether it'll be a complete success or not. But I sneaked away anyhow. This other thing's more important to me right now." "What is it? Can you tell us now?" "Sure. I've got one of the machines in the car, and I'll explain when we're on our way to Canada." Well, this wasn't like Van. Never secretive and always in good humor. He was treating his friends like annoying strangers. "But you can't land in Canada," Bill ventured as they pulled up at the gate of the airport. "Like hell you can't. You watch my smoke and let any bloody Canuck up there try and stop me." He was lifting a small black case from the luggage carrier of the car as he replied. Bart silenced the airman with a look. When they'd taken off and were well underway, Bart opened his black case and set a vacuum tube apparatus in operation. They were nearing the fringe of the glowing sea of red that was the vast blanket of moonweed. It now extended to within a few miles of Baltimore and stretched northward as far as the eye could see. It was a cinch," Van was explaining. "When I first saw that the growth slowed up under the arc lights of Tompkins Cove, it gave me the glimmering of an idea. Then on the following day, when we learned that the weed spread more slowly in sunlight, I was convinced. The stuff is dormant on the moon, you know." "Why?" Bart asked breathlessly. "Because there's no atmosphere surrounding the moon, and the sun's rays are not filtered before they reach its surface as they are here. The invisible rays, ultraviolet and such, are present in full proportion, and the moonweed cannot flourish when subjected to light of the higher frequencies. Well, it died out when the moon lost its atmosphere, and only revived on being brought to Earth. Probably 1,000,000 more times prolific in our dense and damp atmosphere and rich soil. This thing's easy to wipe out." "Yeah," Bart commented dryly. Van was now talking and he could have bitten off his tongue for interrupting him. "This machine of Van's was a generator of invisible light in the ultra indigo range," Van explained. "You couldn't see its powerful beam, but they'd proved in the laboratory that it was certain doom to the moonweed. They'd grown the stuff from seed in steel cages and played with it until they were satisfied. And now would come the final test. 10,000 planes were being equipped with this new generator, which was merely an adaptation of standard directional television transmitters. And tonight, these would start out to fight the weed. It was as simple as that." Beneath them, the red cauldron seethed and tossed as they sped northward, the crimson blanket of death that was steadily covering the country. "Drop to 1,000 feet, Bill," the scientist called. "Then watch below, but don't slow down. We've got to get to Toronto." The ship nosed down and soon leveled off at the prescribed altitude. Van's vacuum tubes lighted to full brilliancy, and a black spot appeared on the glowing surface just beneath them. A black spot that extended into a streak as the plane continued on its way. They were cutting a swath of blackness 50 feet wide through the heart of the growth. "See that?" Van gloated. It's killing them by millions. And the best of it is the effect it leaves behind. The soil is permeated to a depth of several inches, and the stuff will not germinate in the spots where the ray is contracted. Oh, it works to perfection." Well, Bill was exuberant. His hopes revived miraculously. He gave his motor the gun and got out of it every last revolution that it could turn up. Oh, he had to get Van to Canada. Oh, not such a bad idea, this going after Kelly. Bart was voluble in his praise, and then caught himself short as he remembered that he doubted Van only half an hour previously. Doubted him and despaired. But now Van, lapsing into gloomy silence after his triumph, was again thinking of nothing but revenge. The getting of Dan Kelly meant more to him than the extinction of the moonweed. When they landed at the Toronto airport, they were welcomed with open arms instead of with rifle fire as Bill had anticipated. The news had gone ahead of them. Already 1,000 planes flying over the United States were driving back the sea of destruction. The invisible ray was a success, and the name of Carl Vanderventer was now a thing with which to conjure, rather than one on which to heap imprecation and insult. Van grimaced wryly at this last bit of news. And of Danny Kelly? No one at the airport had ever heard of him. Van telephoned into the city, to police headquarters. Oh yes, they had apprehended the fugitive American at the request of Washington, but he was a slippery customer. He'd escaped. So Van raged and fumed. Of what use were the congratulations of the night flyers who still loitered in the hangar? Of what consolation the radio reports of the success of the Ultra Indigo Ray in the States and in Europe? He had come after his man, and he'd failed. And defeat was a bitter pill. News broadcasts from the States were jubilant, and became increasingly so during the night. The moonweed was being driven back on a wide front, and by morning would be entirely surrounded. There would be no further loss of life and little more destruction of property. Carl Vanderventer had saved the day. Van grunted his disgust whenever an announcer mentioned his name. When daylight came, they prepared to return. Little use there was of searching the highways and byways of Canada for the fugitive. He'd simply have to wait until the Canadians were able to get a line on Dan Kelly again. Oh, it was maddening. But Bart was glad. The light of reason was returning to his friend's eyes in the reaction. Then there was a telephone call from the city for Van. Police headquarters wanted it. The fanatical glint returned to his eyes when he ran for the hangar to answer the call. Perhaps they'd already captured Kelly, and he had an order in his pocket for the man's return to the States. He'd been made a deputy, and with Kelly released to him, anything might happen. Something would surely happen. But the police were reporting the unexplainable reappearance of the moonweed just outside the city limits at a point near Cooksville. Would Mr. Vanderventer be so kind as to fly over there and destroy it before any lives were lost? Yes, he would. The growth had covered an acre of ground by the time they reached the spot designated, but it was the work of only a minute to blast it out of existence with the Ultra Indigo Ray. Van then surveyed the blackened and shriveled mass with satisfaction. "Let's land and take a look at it," he said. Bart thought he saw a look of exultation flash over his careworn features. Soon they were wading deep in the blackened remains of the moonweed. The stems and tendrils snapped and crumbled into powder as they passed through. The stuff was done for, no question of that. Bill Peterson yelled and pointed a shaking forefinger at an object that lay in the blackened ruin. It was a human skeleton, the bones bare of flesh and gleaming white in the light of the early morning sun. Van was on his knees, quick as a flash, feeling around the gruesome thing, pawing at the shreds of clothing that remained. And then he was on his feet, his face shining with unholy glee. In his hands were a half-dozen small, smooth objects which looked like pebbles. The diamonds! "I thought so," he exclaimed. "It's Kelly. Only way the seed could have gotten up here. He had some on his clothes and he didn't know it.
Xcara22.
I couldn't get him myself, but anyway, I am satisfied." Well, he staggered and would have fallen had not Bart caught him in his arms. Poor old Van.
Yeah, welcome
Nearly killed him, this thing
to
had.
the variety.
He'd be himself again.
I don't know what I
after
would
it was
call
all over.
my community.
No wonder he'd gone out of his head with the horror
Owners Club.
and the blame had been so cruelly laid on him. No wonder he'd become obsessed with this idea of getting square with Dan Kelly. But now he was content. sleeping like a babe in Bart's arms. Tenderly, they carried him to the plane and laid him out on the cushions in the back. They'd let him sleep as long as he could, returning to Washington, where he'd receive his just dues in recognition for his services. Then would follow the work of reconstruction and rehabilitation. Van would glory in that. Bart regarded his sleeping friend thoughtfully as they winged their swift way toward the American.
I feel like you've been misled. I don't think I would call
his
anyone
face
the
during
N-word
the
over
past few
ZG
hours were
loot.
smoothed
That's
away.
kind of below me.
In their place was an expression of deep contentment. He was at peace with the world once more. Good old Van. What a difference there would be when he awakened to full realization of the changed order of things. What satisfaction and relief. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why I'm not going to the moon. Well, that plus a million and one other reasons, of course. But anyway, another old school classic there for you. Used to do those quite a lot, and I miss it. There's some awesome writing from back in the almost 100 years ago now. I love the way they thought things were going to play out, all that kind of thing. You know, very creative. Anyway, yeah, that's it for... What day is this? God, I'm losing count. Losing track of time. Yes, it's Monday, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, there'll be a podcast over on my second channel tomorrow night. Back here again on Wednesday. I want to do that crazy pizza delivery story that I started a while back. I don't know, being abroad and coming back and everything, it's kind of thrown my schedule completely, but I will return to some of the things that I was doing before, I promise you, very soon. Yeah, so the pizza delivery one, got the military special ops one, which I returned to.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Last week.
I had nothing
There's a
to
few
do with
things
them.
on the,
You
on the go,
like
which I will return
those
to
guys
very
kicked me
soon.
out.
So
Which calls it like
any thoughts
after I
about
killed the
those?
boss. Well, we killed the boss, and they're like, yeah, that guy's a racist. But it's like, bro, I've never done anything to these people. It's just like,
And
I don't know. They want to take advantage of the situation or something. Have some kind of like invisible higher moral ground or something. I don't know. I'm just calling the mode on being ninjas.
by Nick Carlson. The moon hung heavy overhead through a striated bank of clouds. And even though it was a weeknight, the Levine family was gathered on the front
Okay,
lawn.
yeah, that is true,
Next
but
cranial
also I
preparing
didn't
to
actually
start.
say the N-word that time there. I kind
The
of just...
meteor shower was due to start.
I
in a
left
minute.
without loot. I didn't
At
say
least
anything to
according
them. I
Simon,
left the
who would
Discord.
inform them of it at the dinner
I
table
didn't
that
call
evening.
anyone the N-word that night.
A round of smooth talking and extra chores had convinced Travis and Monica.
I'm
to
known
let
for
them all
saying
stay
the
out to
N-word,
catch
but
a glimpse of the
didn't
show.
say it. Didn't do anything wrong to those
As the
people.
hour of 11 dragged on,
So, I don't know.
Travis was growing impatient. They all had work or school in the morning, and even Simon, despite his excitement, was beginning to show signs of fatigue. Was that a yawn, Simon? Monica asked, seeing a hand approach his mouth. No, he chirped, snapping his arms to his side. He stiffened for a moment in a feeble attempt to hide a yawn. Awake. We're not staying out here much longer, Simon, said Travis. Besides, it's only going to get cloudier as the night goes on. We might not even see anything tonight. It'll happen. It has to, Simon said.
You're funny, man. Have the worst day possible. Good luck.
Too bad
Thanks,
you've
you
got
too.
bedtime, said Morgan out of the side of her mouth. You've got school too, young lady. Don't think you're getting up, Monica chided. Morgan merely rolled her eyes, evidently annoyed at being addressed as young lady at the age of 18. 5 more minutes, Simon, Travis announced, checking his watch. His eyelids were drooping with tiredness. No celestial event was worth eschewing his sleep schedule before the morning shift at the lumber mill. Simon merely sighed and looked back up. The moon dimmed and brightened again as clouds passed across it. The stars glimmered and were as expansive as ever, but otherwise the sky was motionless. All right, everyone, let's head in, said Travis, tapping his watch. Simon groaned and slowed, trudging back towards the front door. Monica put a hand on his shoulder. It's all right, honey. Maybe you'll see some tomorrow night, she assured. Simon only continued to pout. Wait, look, Morgan shouted, pointing. The Levine stopped and looked up. At first, there was nothing. Then a single faint, whitish-blue dots streaked across the sky. A moment later another followed, then 2 more. They lingered for a minute longer, watching the ephemeral tail zip in and out of being. Pretty, Monica commented. That's awesome, said Simon. Thanks for letting me stay up, Dad. You're welcome, said Travis, stifling a yawn of his own. He followed his family up the front steps, his bones aching with the desire to lie down and drift off. The screen door rattled open and Slim, their Weimaraner, bounded out the door into the night. Oh no, get the dog, Monica called. I got it, honey, said Travis, and the family shoved their way inside, the door snapping shut. Travis cursed the dog under his breath and trotted after him. Slim's glossy grey coat gleamed in the moonlight, but he was a mindless animal once he got outside. He'd run and run, only to come home when he felt like it. Slim, get back here, Slim. Travis attempted to round him off, but the dog sidestepped with the grace of a deer and galloped across the front lawn, down the slope toward the main road. No, Slim, you dumb dog. The cool air pumped energy back into Travis's muscles as he ran, and he subconsciously regretted that he might not get any sleep at all tonight. The blue darkness suddenly burned orange, and a caustic sizzling erupted in the sky above. Both Slim and Travis slid to a stop as a veritable fireball, the luminosity of a streetlight, plummeted through the atmosphere. Slim's tail tucked between his legs, and he emitted a whining howl, the meteor reflecting in his eyes. It split into 3 parts as it rocketed above the tree line and dissipated entirely. Only a thick plume of star smoke remained, slicing through the clouds like a jet stream. Travis, snapping out of his trance, drew up to Slim and grabbed him by the collar, herding him back to the house. Come on inside, dumb dog, Travis growled. Slim didn't pull away, but he took tentative steps, lagging behind his master, still frightened. It's all right, Slim, said Travis, his voice softening. Come on now. After what felt like way too long, Travis finally opened the door and the dog practically scampered inside, retreating to the living room to hide. Travis glanced up at the smoke trail, which was beginning to break up in the wind. That really was pretty, he muttered, lumbering upstairs to bed. It was cloudy the next morning. Even with his usual cup of coffee, Travis thought he hadn't blinked all the sleep out of his eyes as he peered out the window. It was dismal and grey outside, courtesy of the overcast weather, and a knot pressed above his eye from the low barometric pressure. He took a sip from his mug, lamenting that mornings like this couldn't be spent back in bed. Wiping mist off the glass, he looked down at the front lawn. Regardless of the weather, a flock of a dozen little brown birds would typically show up in the early mornings, pecking at seeds and bugs tangled in the grass. Travis set his coffee down and rubbed his eyes, focusing harder on the lawn. Well, there were things on his lawn for sure, but there were hundreds of them. Silvery, motionless orbs that resembled mushrooms, except shiny and bright, more liquid than solid. He stared at them, more awakened than coffee could have done. Dew, or something, he assumed. It doesn't look like any dew I've ever seen. Travis checked the clock and realized with a start he had to get moving. He made for the linen closet and took his work clothes off their hangers, slipping into them. Ready to go, he stepped outside into the chilly morning, but not without stopping and examining one of the strange blobs up close. They seemed as though someone or something had simply dolloped them onto the grass with an ice cream scooper. He poked one with the tip of his boot, and it stuck to the toe like melted wax. Grimacing, Travis wiped it off from the grass and turned to be on his way, only to step directly on another one, which flattened and spread over his soul. Oh, for shit's sake, he spat, stepping over them on his way to the road, the way one steps over goose crap at the park. Drawing to the main road, he scraped it off the bottom of his shoe, catching a pungent, bleach-like odor. Well, for once he was eager to get to the mill, assuming that one of his co-workers might know what exactly had decided to infest his lawn overnight. Upon arriving home that afternoon, Travis saw that the globs hadn't yet dissipated from his lawn. Definitely not due, he concluded. His family was standing around the dinner table as he entered the kitchen. Travis, what on earth is that stuff on the lawn? Said Monica. Looks like someone squirted shampoo everywhere, said Simon.
These guys are
Smells like one of those
actually
awful
here
trees that
really
blooms in
early.
the spring,
What the fuck?
said Morgan.
But we're not pulling
no
though.
idea, Travis replied, sitting down at the table. He looked up at them, still standing and staring at him. He gestured for them to join him. Well, I asked around at work, though, he said, over the sound of creaking chairs. Didn't get a solid answer. Some said it was dead.
I'm wondering how Alliance
said it was
managed to like,
slime mold.
parkour on top
Johnson
of that
said it was
flag.
aliens.
Can you just like jump?
course.
Oh wait,
Johnson thinks everything is
Oh.
aliens.
this kind of has
But
like some
I've never even
climbability
heard of
to
anything
it.
like that before, said
Oh
Monica, passing around
shit!
a plate
Okay,
of cornbread.
I see.
Well, yeah, it came after the meteor shower,
But
Simon added. Did mention that, said Travis, grabbing a piece and dishing himself some beef stew. Another guy at work then chimed in and suggested it was something called star jelly, whatever that is. Star jelly? Monica parroted. Oh, that's a cool name, said Simon. Though, well, it's less like jelly and more like snot. Star snot. Oh, the shooting stars sneezed all over our lawn and showered us with their star snot. Ew, Morgan grumbled, stirring her stew. Well, hopefully it'll be gone by tomorrow morning, said Travis, starting on his dinner. Scaring all those little birds away. Well, they don't like that much either.
I'm
Guess
gonna
that's
get
one
nuked
thing we
by
have in
the
common.
marshals here, I think.
Congrats,
Maybe.
Dad. You're on the same
what?
wavelength
Okay,
as
yeah.
birds, said Morgan. And the family broke out in laughter.
Oh well, at least we
Well,
got
it
age station
didn't
like
go away
14
overnight.
seconds.
Perturbed,
No,
Travis stepped
fuck.
outside earlier than
Don't.
normal to survey the extent of the spread.
Fuck.
To his surprise, he noticed a substance clinging to tree branches and roots, and he nearly gasped when he saw more glutinous orbs adhered to the side of his house. Whether he'd overlooked them or they'd multiplied overnight, he didn't know. Regardless, the star snot had transcended from a curiosity to a concern, and the thought of it stuck to his brain as he powered through another day of work. He was sloppy and uncoordinated at the mill, wondering if he would find his lawn yellowed and dying from exposure to the substance. Then there was the uncertainty of it all, worrying about if there was even anything to worry about. Oh, I just wish I knew, he rued, clocking out for the day after a reprimand from his supervisor. He came home that afternoon to an even more unpleasant scene. Look at this, Monica snapped as she walked through the front door, holding out a severe-looking slip of paper. His brow furrowing, he took it and skimmed through it. Out of school suspension, he read. Simon, what is this? Simon was cowering on the couch, his head dipped with remorse. I just brought a little bit and showed it around. Apparently, Monica cut in. Simon thought it was a good idea to scoop some of that stuff in a freaking mason jar and bring it into school today. Oh, he was getting all his classmates to smell it. Simon, what the hell were you thinking? Travis shouted. You don't know what this stuff is. It might be toxic or contain spores or something. What made you think that was a good idea? Simon opened his mouth to respond, but Monica drowned him out. One of his classmates thought that he had... She lowered her voice so only he could hear. Semen in the jar, and reported it to the principal. Well, of course, Simon couldn't prove that it wasn't because he had no idea what that was. And now he's got a suspension. Oh, smart move, kid, Travis groaned, rolling his eyes. Well, I know how you're spending your Saturday tomorrow. And that's helping us get rid of all that shit off our lawn. Whatever it is, it's caused nothing but trouble and it's gotta go. No, can I at least save something? Simon pleaded. Absolutely not. But that stuff might not show up again until the next meteor shower. What if... I don't want to hear any more of this. Now, go upstairs. You're grounded for the rest of the night. Yeah, but... No more. Yeah, but... Up to bed. The Levines rose bright and early the next morning to go to work. But as they scanned the lawn, shivering against the cold. They openly speculated how they would even go about cleaning up the star snot. It would not easily detach from the grass, and the globs were too far spread apart to gather them en masse. After a brief, heated discussion, they settled on using shovels and Slim's pooper scooper to deposit them into trash bags. It was slow, tedious work. The lawn was big, and despite their agreed-upon fix, the star snot refused to cooperate. The only exciting thing that happened was Slim getting out once again and attempting to eat some of the star snot. The sight of Travis carrying him back to the house under one arm gave them some lick of amusement. Only when the sun was beating overhead around noon did Travis finally straighten up and call it a day. Streaks of shiny grey still permeated in the grass, but they seemed to subconsciously agree that the stuff most likely wouldn't come back. At least, that's what they hoped. Monica had gone inside early to prepare brunch, and as Travis, Morgan and Simon finally shuffled in, the smell of homemade quiche clashed unpalatably with that of soil and sweat. They managed to scarf down a slice each before being sent upstairs to shower. Simon was directed straight to his room afterward. "You think you're being too harsh with him?" Monica asked up in their bedroom as she slipped her husband's sweaty shirt off, handing him a wet rag. "No," Travis grunted, wiping down his shoulders and forehead. "We have no idea what that stuff even is. I'm just glad it's not coming back, as far as I know." "Well, you feel fine, don't you? What if it really is just some kind of weird fungus or whatever your co-worker said it was?" Travis shrugged, brushing moisture out of his eyes. "I guess we'll find out. Besides, it's not so much what Simon brought in, as it is him not thinking about what he was doing. Kid needs to learn." Monica pursed her lips, but didn't say any more. Unclothed, Travis stepped into the shower, shuddering from the cool water running down his back. Something more than water crawled off his arm, and he opened his eyes to see a nugget of star snot splat onto the shower floor and slide toward the drain. He got a whiff of that acrid, suggestive smell again. "Away with you," he thought, closing his eyes again. For good. Sunday morning, Travis looked out onto his lawn again, pleased to see that no more star snot had bloomed overnight. The sight of untouched green had never before filled him with such relief. As he watched a handful of little brown birds descended from above to land on the grass, he smiled, sipping his coffee again. "Come on, we don't want to be late," Monica called out, arriving downstairs in a Sunday finest. "All right, Mom." "Yeesh," Morgan sleepily called back. "I swear that girl hit 18 and became the living dead," she muttered, joining her husband by the window. "Oh look, the birds are back." "Song sparrows," said Travis. "You can tell by the barring on their chests." A brief pause followed this proclamation. "How did you know that? Do we have a bird book or something?" Monica asked, bemused. Travis felt at a loss for words. I don't know, actually." His wife stared at him, a slight smile on her face. "Maybe you knew all along and it just came back to you." Simon came down from the stairs at that moment, also dressed in his Sunday finest, a miracle by his standards. His brown suit jacket was clean and pressed, and his red tie had been knotted perfectly. "Oh, Simon, you look great," said Monica, eyeing him up and down. "Thanks, Mom," he said in a tone that was low, yet awake. "Have to look my best for Mass. I heard at school that missing church is like missing a wedding." His mother's smile dipped a little. "Simon, what's wrong with your eyebrows?" "Nothing," he said a little too quickly, pretending to busy himself with his cuffs. "Oh, let me see," she fussed, bending down and swiveling him towards her. "Simon, were you plucking the hairs out of your eyebrows?" Travis turned and saw that his son's eyebrows were patchy and asymmetrical, stripes of mismatched pale skin poking between the remaining hairs. "Simon," Monica continued, "why did you do this to yourself?" "I don't know," he said with a half shrug. "Well, stop doing it," she urged. brushing Simon's brow. Hopefully they'll grow back by the time you get back to school. You don't want to look like you have mange. Please, don't touch them, he said, recoiling from her. He turned and retreated out of sight to the living room. His parents stared after him. What was that all about? Monica finally said. Probably trying to butter us up by dressing nice, said Travis. The kids plug their eyebrows to get attention. Don't let up on him. I still think we were too harsh, she asserted. We can't let up, he repeated sharply. Just follow through with it. This weirdness will go away once his punishment's over with. Morgan came downstairs next. Her church get-up the same one from the week before. Really, Morgan? You don't have any other outfits? Said Monica. Morgan said something that came out as a yawn and a few monosyllabic grunts. Monica sighed. Well, go feed the dog and let's go. Morgan peered into the kitchen where Slim's food bowl was. It's still full from yesterday, she reported. Huh? Slim? Monica called. Come here, boy. The dog didn't respond. He'll eat when he gets hungry, she said. Come on, Simon, we have to go. Simon emerged silently from the living room and joined the rest of his family. As he passed by, Travis noticed a spot of whiteness on his scalp. He gritted his teeth and led them out the door. Whatever Simon's scheme was, he had to learn it wouldn't work a second time. Slim's food bowl remained untouched. The Levines called out to him when they arrived home from church, scouring the house, until Morgan found him in a most unlikely place. Slim's up here, she yelled. The others pounded up the stairs after her. Where was he? Monica asked. But as they stepped onto the landing, they got their answer in the form of the attic door, wide open, its ladder deployed onto the floor. Morgan's head poked from the opening in the ceiling, wearing a mask of confusion. What on earth? Said Monica. Did he get the door open or something? Nope. It was closed when I got it, said Morgan. Did you hear him or something? No, I just... A dark cloud passed over Morgan's face. I just felt like I had to come up here. They looked around at each other. Simon cocked his head, staring up at the ceiling. They climbed the ladder in silence, piling into the attic. Slim had retreated to the far corner, shying away from the shaft of light pouring through the window. They had to squint their eyes to see him. He seemed motionless, and they could make out his stance. Head lowered, one paw raised, tail between his legs. Slim, what's the matter? Come here, boy. Travis beckoned, holding out his hand. Slim turned his head but remained still, his periwinkle eyes fixated on Travis. They seemed almost accusing. Travis snapped his fingers. Slim, come here. The dog finally relented and walked up to him. His gait was slow and smooth, his tail unmoving, eyes still locked with Travis's. What's wrong with him? Said Monica as Slim gave her a suspect look. Do you think being around that stuff made him sick? I think so. He tried eating some of it yesterday, said Travis. He was acting like this during the meteor shower, though, when a big one showed up overhead and... He stopped himself, shooting a glance at Simon, but his son was only staring around at the attic with a mildly interested expression. Morgan walked up to where Slim had been hiding and picked something up from the corner. She set it down in the sunlight. It was an old, tattered cardboard box. The Levines gathered around it as she lifted the top off. She nearly shrieked at the sight. Inside was a framed display of various spiders, all pinned to the backing. Most were small and brown. One was the size of her palm, mottled yellow and grey. She removed it from the box and the uncovered stray sewing needles and tangled balls of yarn. It reeked of mouldy cardboard. Whose is this? Monica asked. I don't know, said Morgan, putting the lid back on the box. And how did Slim know where it was? Monica followed up. I don't know, Morgan reiterated. Travis noticed his daughter's face had gone pale, her gaze almost magnetically attracted to the far wall across the way. He squinted into the gloom, but couldn't see anything. Let's get out of here, said Travis. A whistling, fluttering sound suddenly shot past the window, and they all jumped. What was that? Morgan yelled. Calm down. It was a mourning dove. Their wings make that whistling noise when they fly. Travis immediately responded. Monica looked at him again. His second spontaneous bird fact had evidently troubled her. He looked back at her, his heart sinking. Some ominous understanding seemed to wordlessly unite them in that moment. Please, let's just get out of here, she said, and the Levines made for the ladder again. Where's Slim? Slim, as it turned out, had left the attic himself and found another dark corner to occupy. The rest of their Sunday passed without incident. Monday morning, as Travis left for work and Morgan went off to school, Monica wandered the house listlessly, with only Slim and a grounded Simon for company. She tried busying herself with housework, but the bizarre happenings in the attic and Slim's strange behavior kept tugging at the back of her mind. Perhaps it was right for Simon to have been suspended for bringing the star snot into school. More and more she believed exposure to it was incurring untoward side effects on them all. But why were they so weird? And what more could come of them? And it didn't help that Slim had stayed put in his living room corner, giving her the same dead stare. She deliberately avoided the room, making up excuses to stay in the kitchen or retreat upstairs. But upstairs was where Simon was, spending the duration of his punishment, and she felt compelled to peek her head in and check up on him. She would find him deep in prayer, facing away from the door, resting his head on his forearms with his hands folded above him. Any good Christian mother would not be bothered by his habits, but that gave her no indication as to how he was handling himself. If he were to turn around, would she see a completely bald face with sore red gashes across his brow? Oh, enough of this, she thought. She went back downstairs to confront Slim to try and figure out what was up with him. He stood his ground, peering up at her balefully. Slim, what's wrong, dog? She held out her hand, expecting a lick or a sniff. The dog did nothing. She extended her arm further. Slim pushed himself deeper into the wall, and his gaze snapped to a point above her shoulder in one split-second motion. Monica drew back herself. His movements were nothing dog-like. The way he seemed to scuttle. Slim's lips quivered, and ribbons of saliva dripped freely from his muzzle. Monica gave a noise of disgust and retracted.
How do I keep unmuting myself?
His face took on an almost perverted triumph as he dribbled a film of spittle around him and curled tighter in the corner, a low rumble coursing up from his throat. Horrified, alone, she felt no choice but to flee back upstairs to Simon, hoping that there was still some semblance of normalcy about him. Simon, she cried, throwing his door open. The boy was standing in the middle of his room, brushing minute hairs off his fingertips. When he looked up, only a few scraggly remnants held on above his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom, he croaked. I feel dirty. Then stop doing this to yourself, for God's sake, Monica pleaded, barging in and ripping his arms away from his face. Simon shook his head. No, I feel dirty with them on. She gaped at him, then wrapped him in a hug. He stiffened in her embrace. Please, don't touch me, he said, flatly. Monica let go, but continued to stare tearfully into his face. You're not doing this because you're upset with us, are you? And she went to grab him again, but stopped herself halfway. Please, tell me, are you upset with us? Oh, I love you. Simon cocked his head in that quiet, subdued manner. If it makes you happy, I'll stop. Monica offered a smile that seemed to rip a fissure across her cheeks. As she left his room, he returned to his prayerful vigil. Drowning in ominous chills, she checked the clock in the hallway. It was barely past noon. Travis's performance at work had continued to decline, due this time to a gnawing cramp that had flared in his stomach. Each twinge of pain coincided with the arrival of more small brown birds that flew among the rafters above, birds that he recognized as house sparrows. Pretty little things. Too bad they displace our native tree swallows. His supervisor had threatened him with probation if he slipped up once more. The man's words rattled in Travis's head as he took the dusty road back to the house. He knew it all had something to do with the star snot. All his co-workers' outlandish theories suddenly hit too close to home. He headed up the lawn. The house seemed quiet. But as Travis reached for the front door, the holly bushes caught his eye, and he noticed they were caked in thick, glutinous ribbons. His throat seized up, but he looked closer and saw the texture was thinner than star snot, translucent and studded with bubbles. Against his better judgment, he leaned in and took a whiff. The smell was instantly familiar, then troubling. Dog breath. The bushes rustled, and Travis jumped as he saw Slim's pale eyes staring up at him through the branches. The dog emerged from behind them, chewing up something in his spittle-soaked jaws. A few insectoid legs that could have been a grasshopper's dropped from his mouth, and he emitted a low, guttural howl that fluctuated and flowed almost lyrically. "No, no," Travis murmured, slipping inside the house. "None of that, please." The walls felt askew and cramped as he stumbled through the foyer, his abdomen flaring again. Amid the pain, he couldn't shake the thought that Slim's noises had resonated with him in a gut-wrenching, uncanny manner. The words, decipherable to him as human speech, surfaced in his mind like dead bodies in slurry. "Look what I brought for you." "Travis!" Monica cried, bolting from the living room into his arms. "Oh my God, Travis, what's happening to us?" "That stuff," he muttered, fighting another cramp in his stomach. "That stuff is doing this to us, but I don't understand how or why." "We need help," she whispered through tears. "I nearly went crazy home alone with them. Did you see Slim? I had to put him out. He wouldn't stop staring." "He's out there," Travis whispered back. "He still hasn't touched his food, I'm guessing." Monica shook her head, smearing tears across his shirt. Travis pursed his lips grimly. "That dog is fucked up. How's Simon? What's he been doing?" She only shook her head further, her anguished voice muffled against his chest. "And Morgan?" he pushed. Monica finally looked up at him. "She's in the attic, reading a book." She spoke as if it was some horrible crime. Travis's brow creased, and Monica shoved him in frustration. She hates reading. She never picked up a book in her life. Just sitting in the corner reading like she's someone else. Travis sighed. Tomorrow I'll call Dr. Klein. If this really is some kind of chemical exposure or madness or something like that, he'll find it. Monica grabbed his wrist and held it up to her, kissing his hand. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't there on Saturday. I wasn't out as long as the rest of you. I only wish I could share your sufferings." "Oh, no, you don't," said Travis. "Don't you dare think like that. You're the only one with any hope of staying sane through this. You have to be strong, honey. For us." She squeezed his wrist tighter. I will, for us." "Very good. Now, I love you." He kissed her, then made a casual stroll past her for the bathroom. Closing the door, he violently hunched over the toilet and vomited, releasing all his pent-up nausea. "None of us are strong enough," he thought between bouts. "We're in God's hands now." That night, Travis dreamt he was being chased down a dark hallway. Their own home. A bald, towering man brandishing a fillet knife loomed behind him like a brick wall, blocking out any chance of doubling back. "Gotta get it out of here," the man breathed. "Gotta get it out of here." Travis threw his bedroom door open, and dream logic sucked him into his own bed, where nightmare bindings held him down, and his pursuer arrived at his side, the knife poised almost lovingly over his stomach. He awoke with a jolt, clutching his midriff, pain contorting his guts. He feared the knife had crossed from his dream into reality. He grabbed at the skin around his stomach, and nearly groaned with relief when he found no blood or wound. His mouth still tasted sour from bile. It was still intact, only burdened with his mysterious sickness. But he quickly realized there was blood, and new pain, little pricks pulsing in his nipples. He directed his gaze to his chest and saw twin trickles of red staining through his undershirt. Even as he watched, he felt that uncomfortable hot-cold sensation of blood running down his skin. His stomach gave another twinge. Jesus H. God, he thought. It's almost like I'm... He leaned over to shake his wife awake and nearly screamed. Standing over her was Simon, his white face completely devoid of eyebrows and eyelashes. It made him seem much older, like a wax sculpture, and his glazed expression was one of subdued disdain. "Simon," Travis hissed, pulling the sheets over the colored streaks on his shirt. His son swayed on the spot like a tree in the wind. "I see you with the temptress," he murmured. "I see you cuddling with the poison fruit of your sins, your sick indulgences." He gave a twitch. "The good Lord, He does not permit you to lie with a woman as you would a man. That's bad enough, but this?" He gave a sleepy gesture towards Monica's sleeping form. "You have no idea what you've done." "Simon, what are you talking about? Wake up," said Travis. "Hush, Vanessa," he gulped. "These creatures can change sex on a whim. It's infected you with charm. Time will tell if your wretched womb will bring it to full term." "Simon," Travis commanded, and Monica finally woke up, gasping at the sight of her son's hairless face. "Oh my God, Simon, my baby, what have you done?" she demanded. Simon twitched again, and his eyes seemed to blaze with color. "Mom?" he croaked. "What? Was I dreaming?" "For God's sake, Simon," Monica fussed, scrambling out of bed and grabbing his shoulders. "Come back to bed. We're going to make you feel better, I promise." Oh, get your vile feelers off me," Simon snapped, recoiling from them. "Lord knows where your hands have been." He pivoted and disappeared back into the dark. Monica sank to her knees, face in her hands, overwhelmed with soul. Travis, his insides twisting up, made to get himself out of bed. His legs felt sticky and warm. Peeking under the covers, he saw another pool of redness spreading from his boxes, soaking into the mattress, paired with a stabbing pressure in his groin. Fighting back his disgust, he observed his wife broken down on the floor and nearly teared up himself. He suddenly felt weak, the after effect of having passed so much blood. The knowledge of unknowing tore at him. He could only acknowledge they were on the losing side of a one-sided war. Travis had opted to stay home Tuesday. It wasn't as if he'd had any choice in the matter. He'd lost almost all sensation in his legs. After his spate of lackluster performances, he wouldn't be surprised if he walked into work only to be terminated on the spot. Monica had called Dr. Klein, who arrived in the late morning and first examined Travis. He noticed that male lactation was not unheard of, a result of a fluctuation of the hormone prolactin. But what seemed to ooze out of Travis was pure blood, and Dr. Klein observed that passing it through his sphincter was atypical of any hormone imbalance. If he were a female, it would be symptomatic of a broken pregnancy, he told Travis and Monica, but unless my calculations are off, Travis Levine is certainly not female. What could it have been? The stuff he was exposed to? Monica inquired. Can't say. Some sort of radioactive or mutagenic substance, I reckon, Dr. Klein guessed, reading Travis's pulse. Do you have a sample of whatever it was? No, Travis said, rueing not allowing Simon to keep any of the star snot. That'll make it hard, said Dr. Klein. Where are your children now? Well, Simon's locked himself in his room. I can hear him shuffling around, Monica said. And Morgan's in the attic. I let her stay home from school today, until she gets better. An odd look came over Dr. Klein. Let me take a look at her. Up in the attic, Morgan sat cross-legged in the corner, a book balanced on her shins. Her hair was tangled and undone. It was most unlike her not to freshen up in the morning. As Monica and Dr. Klein approached, she gave a quick glance up and her eyes narrowed at the doctor. "Who are you?" she asked. "Dr. Gary Klein," he responded. "I'd like to check you over to try and figure out what happened to you all." "There's something on your shoulder," Morgan muttered, going back to her book. Dr. Klein brushed himself off. "There's nothing there. What are you talking about?" Morgan shook her head. "No, something bad on your shoulder, gripping onto you, not letting go. Fuck it. Tell it to go fuck itself." Her voice was bitter and low, gravelly with fatigue. Dr. Klein looked around and made eye contact with Monica, who was hovering slightly behind him. He pursed his lips, as if he had to stop himself from saying something. He then pulled out a light and shone it at the wall above her head. Illuminated in his beam were the lines of a poem, scrawled in jagged black ink. "Spiders took my brother's throat. Mother racked with child's bloat. Daddy planning huge surprise. A whore I am in devil's eyes." "Did you know this was here?" Dr. Klein asked. "No," said Monica. "Morgan, did you write this?" She didn't answer. "Morgan, did you write this?" Dr. Klein inquired. She looked up again. "Yeah, I did. What of it? You gonna put me away, Doctor? Or will Daddy get you too?" "See?" Monica whispered. "It's like she doesn't see me anymore. She's talking nonsense. She's a whole different person." "I'm sure," Dr. Klein whispered back. "And I don't think she wrote that. I believe we're good to leave her here. I'd like to see Simon now." They descended the ladder and Monica knocked on Simon's door. There was an eerie silence, as if someone constantly shuffling about inside had just stopped. "Simon, open the door," Monica demanded, jiggling the doorknob. "It's back," they heard him mutter. "I warned her it wouldn't go away, didn't I? Keeping clean wasn't enough. Dirty bitch invited germs inside. Lesbian slut. Her yield must be destroyed." "Listen," Monica hissed. "He thinks I'm some kind of thing, something evil and low, something that doesn't deserve to exist. He's not talking about me right now. He's talking about Travis." Dr. Klein nodded. "Again, I'm sure." Monica stared at him. "Why do you say that? Where are you going with this?" "I need to talk to Travis now," he said. They re-entered their bedroom, where Travis was still lying down, applying fresh paper towels to his bleeding chest. "Mr. Levine," the doctor asked, "did Simon ever mention anything specific to you, like a name?" Travis grimaced against another upheaval in his stomach. He called me Vanessa." "And you don't know of Vanessa? You don't know where he could have picked up the name Vanessa?" "No." Dr. Klein sighed. He pushed his briefcase aside with his foot, squeezing the bridge of his nose. "What?" Monica demanded. "What is it? What do you know?" All who breathed in that stuff were experiencing these things. No chance you all picked up any outside information? He looked up, his face grave. And none of you are aware of the history of this house. Monica and Travis shook their hands. Dr. Klein sighed again. Barring any more evidence that emerges, I'm afraid I can't help you further as a doctor. Monica's lips parted slightly. What do you mean, as a doctor? The doctor regarded them grimly. He took his glasses off and pulled up a chair in the corner of the room, sitting down upon it. Monica lowered herself onto the foot of the bed. Oh, you all moved here 5 years ago. Makes sense you wouldn't know. He explained. The family that owned this house before you were the Glicks. Husband, wife, 2 kids named Severin and Isabel. I knew Isabel the best. I treated her for depression and the occasional self-inflicted wounds. She was normally reserved, quiet and shy, except when it came to her family. She would tell me everything. Her family, oh, they terrified her. Severin was a nightmare. That boy was only 6, yet he already had serious issues. He started collecting spiders. They fascinated him. Well, I can imagine why. Their patience, their designs, their killer edge. I got to the point where he started acting like them. Took up weaving, ate bugs, as a coping mechanism. How do you know all this? Monica asked, her hand over her mouth. I'm getting there, said the doctor. It was a coping mechanism. Demented as it was, against his father, Randall Glick. He was the true horror. A religious fanatic who openly likened sin to dirt and impurities. So much so that he shaved his head and the rest of his face. Everyone called him the Skeleton Man.
Almost got
obsessive-compulsive disorder by
damn rogues.
Had a bad enough reputation with the other folks in town, so you can only imagine what it was like living with him. The abuse was bad enough. Isabel practically lived in the attic, busying herself reading and writing, just to get away from it all, from him. Severin would do his thing at home, his spider act. Even at that young age, he couldn't function in a school environment. They were overseen by their strained mother, Vanessa. A tremendous silence descended upon the lines. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the picture being formed was ugly and shocking. When Vanessa got pregnant with her 3rd child, said Dr. Klein, Randall was incensed. He wasn't convinced it was his. He accused her of being unfaithful first, but as his mania exasperated, it morphed into her making sexual congress with an impure spirit. He thought she was bearing a creature with a single-minded purpose of his own destruction. Oh, the devil works in mysterious ways, he would say. Things went quiet for a few months. Then they picked up again one November night. Oh, they picked up all right. This whole front lawn was swarming with police cars. Oh, night became day from all the blaring lights. Officers went in. They all came out white as ghosts. They very well might have died from what they found. Oh, from the coroner's reports, Vanessa died first, eviscerated, the child in her womb crushed with bare hands. The 2 children fled to the attic, pursued by their father, where Isabella, Dr. Klein paused, taking a deep, calming breath. She decided she'd rather take her own life than give it to her father. Severin was found bruised and beaten, stuck and tangled in pins and yarn. No one could figure out if it was Randall or the kid himself who did him in. And Randall fell on his own knife. That, the coroner said, was definitely intentional. Monica was crying again, her face in her hands. Travis remained frozen, eyes wide and utterly speechless. The doctor stood up, not looking any of them in the face. In short, folks, I saw the Glicks again today. In Morgan, Travis, Simon. And from what you told me about the way your dog's been acting, in him too. So, Monica offered, you're suggesting that stuff on the lawn was... Oh, whatever you want to call it. Dr. Klein finished. Soul, ether. I don't think there's a good enough name for it, frankly, but something about that meteor shower made it condense, for lack of a better term. And now the Glicks are coming back. Severin and Slim. Poor Isabella and Morgan. Vanessa and Travis. Well, I can't imagine a pregnant woman's physiology would mesh with a grown man's. Oh, that reminds me, another thing too. Vanessa loved birds. She could name anything that flew through her yard. Monica's hand covered her heart. Which means Randall Glick is re-emerging in Simon, said Dr. Klein. And I fear now that they're back, this house's history is doomed to repeat itself. Monica sprang up. Oh, Simon, we have to get him now. She sprinted for the hallway, but halted almost immediately. At the far end, Simon's door was wide open. Oh no, she whispered. He'll come for Travis first, said Dr. Klein. I'll stay here with him. You go find Morgan. Get her out of here. Monica nodded, wiping her eyes, and bolted out of sight. Travis, still immobile, winced with pain as more blood leaked from his nipples, and his stomach twisted into knots. Dr. Klein stood guard in the doorway. They heard the sounds of the attic ladder descending, of feet on rickety steps. Will he have the strength of a grown man? Travis winced, barely conscious from the agony. I can't say, was all that Dr. Klein replied. I hope not, Travis breathed, his eyelids flitting. Help. Stay with me, Mr. Levine, Dr. Klein urged, risking a few steps forward. Stay with me. A jarring clatter sounded off outside. Travis spasmed from shock. Dr. Klein snapped over to the window. There was a screaming, clawing, pounding. Something was trying to climb the outside wall. It ascended, approaching the window pane. Slim's face appeared through the second-story window. His eyes were buggy. Cobwebs of saliva ran down his jaws. Tufts of fur were missing from his face, revealing the scabby, wrinkly skin beneath. He pressed his snout into the glass, staring intently at Travis. He howled 3 vocal bursts, garbled and strained with the effort to speak in human tongue. Run, Mom, run. Severin, Travis commanded. Sev, Slim, get out of here. The dog whined and smashed his nose into the window. The glass cracked and his face bloodied. Run, Mom, run, Mom, run. He howled again, hammering his face into the pane like a woodpecker. The cracks branched wider. Severin, Travis wailed. Dr. Klein flew for the window. No, get out of here, he snapped. Like a trailing spectre, Simon followed Dr. Klein into the room and stabbed him in the kidney. The doctor screamed in pain, flailing around to strike the child, but Simon had already plunged the kitchen knife into his flesh with murderous precision. Roses of red bloomed through the doctor's coat as he crumpled to the floor, twitching and spluttering. Standing over him with supreme disinterest, Simon wiped the blade clean on his sleeve. He turned to face his father. He was completely hairless, save for one greasy tussock that clung to his scalp and hung down his face. He flipped it out of his eyes and took slow, savoring steps toward him. Slim had disappeared. Vanessa, said Simon in an oily tone. Gotta get it out of you. Fate held Travis down. He knew what was coming. Vanessa hadn't been lucky, and neither would he. Up in the attic, Monica had found Morgan in her usual spot. Her daughter's hands were pressed to her ears. It's happening, she was muttering. Daddy's on a warpath. It's happening. Morgan? Monica pleaded, kneeling in front of her. She blotted out the unseen carnage on the floor below. We have to get out of here, please. I don't know who you are, Morgan growled. You don't exist. Fuck you. Morgan, please. Stop your lies. I've heard enough of them. Monica closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Isabella, she said. A flicker of movement registered in Morgan's face. Monica pushed her further. Isabella, I know what happens to you. I can stop it, but you have to come with me. I don't want it to happen to you. You're so much more than that. Things had gone quiet downstairs. Morgan looked up at her mother. You know what happens to me, she uttered. Yes, said Monica. You won't leave this room alive unless you leave it with me. Morgan stared blankly at her. Then she rose to her feet. Do what you need to do, she said. Come down with me, Monica urged, and together they descended the ladder to the landing. Wait here, she told Morgan as she headed to her bedroom. Travis, I got her. Let's... Her husband was sprawled on the crimson-soaked mattress, opened up like a fillet, and Simon was digging through his ruptured abdomen, elbow deep in viscera. Monica screamed and fled back to the ladder, wailing hysterically. The sound of a child's footfall welled up, and Simon emerged in the hallway, a line of blood across his face. It wasn't there, he roared. Cursed spirit, what have you done with your yield? Get away, Monica shrieked. Just get away, for God's sake, just leave us alone. Creatures of dirt, he sneered, wielding the knife. My wrath is the Lord's. My cleansing is the fires of hell. He pointed the blade to Morgan, who was cowering behind the ladder in a near comatose state. I'll take you as retribution for Vanessa. He charged at them. Monica reared up and screamed with all her might. Randall, Glick. Simon stopped, his bald face confused. Monica surged forth and barreled into him. Simon tumbled sideways and fell down the stairs as her momentum carried her across the floor. He slid and bounced, swinging his limbs, the knife still clutched in his hand. He landed on his stomach. There was the grisly crunch of a blade slipping between his ribs. He fell still instantly. The silence that followed nearly brought down the house. Monica flattened herself, sobbing onto the floorboards, her voice muffled. Morgan knelt beside her, laying a consoling hand on her shoulder. I owe my life to you, she whispered. Thank you. Thank you. But Monica only cried harder, smearing her face with tears. No amount of star snot could have changed her more than the untenable misery that had poisoned her very soul. Monica and Isabella observed the black-clad figures milling around the room. It was to be a small service, brief and contained. Monica felt the need to pay their respects. No more ceremony beyond that. The husband and son she once knew and loved had vanished long before they died. 2 coffins of differing sizes lined the far wall. Funeral goers ran their hands across their glossy exteriors. It was more out of solidarity than anything else. No one in town had known the Levines for very long. Despite that, someone familiar did approach them. Ms. Clara, Simon's homeroom teacher. Hi, Mrs. Levine, she said. I'm so sorry. I love Simon. He was such a good boy. He was, wasn't he? Monica replied, her voice thin. Please remember him as he was. Miss Clara shook her head, her lip trembling. And your husband, too. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Thank you, said Monica. I don't think that'll be necessary, though. My daughter and I are gonna go on a little vacation soon. I feel like... She laughed in spite of herself. I feel like I haven't known her for many years. That'll be nice, said Miss Clara. She smiled too. Oh, I think I need a vacation too. My entire class has been driving me nuts. Why? What's going on? Said Monica. Miss Clara put her hands on her hips. All this week they've been pulling their hairs out of their eyebrows. I don't know if it's some practical joke or the stress from finals, but it's aggravating me no end. Her eyes suddenly narrowed. You don't think it had anything to do with that jar Simon was passing around, do you? Monica blinked. I can't say. Troubling, said Miss Clara, shaking her head. Oh, my respects to you all. God bless. And she walked away to talk to another funeral goer. Monica looked down at Isabella, her mouth needle thin. Isabella, she declared, more and more I think getting far, far away from here is a wonderful idea.
So, my dear friends, I hope you enjoyed the backdrop to that video tonight. Now, I do have a Patreon. I don't make a big deal of it. It's just, one of those things. And if you'd like to throw me $1 or $2, it'd be very much appreciated, but it's not the backbone of what I do. Everything is here just for your enjoyment. Anyway, I made a Patreon video today about how I make my video footage. So that might be fun for you. Go over to Patreon, take a look. If you feel like joining and bugging me $1, that would be lovely. If not, just enjoy. Well, that's enough for this evening, my dear friends. Till the next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye.
The Neuralink. Let's give it a listen. 11 days ago. I don't know if
It's time to sit back and relax
or may
with your
not have
favorite
listened to
drink.
this.
And listen.
The Neuralink by Augustus Cordoba. Diane Morgan loved her Neuralink. At least, she used to. The neural implant had been a game changer for her. Deadlines crushed, memories sharpened. Fluent French downloaded straight into her brain without so much as flipping a page. The soft glow pulsing under her skin behind her ear felt like part of her now. Like a second heartbeat.
I can only unmute once I have OBS.
She'd come home late from the lab,
And
back hitting the
remute.
floor with a dull thud. Kevin was in Tokyo all week, and the silence in the apartment stretched on and on. She cracked open a bottle of water and dropped into her desk chair, ready to sift through research notes. Mood enhancement, the Neuralink whispered in her mind, slick and silent. Cortisol levels indicate elevated stress. She didn't even need to reply. Just the thought, accept, and the implant obeyed. A warm numbness slid through her nerves, calm and controlled. Yeah, that's what it gave her. Exactly what it promised. Then, without warning, another thought cut through the quiet. The birds are watching. Her hands froze above the keyboard. That wasn't hers. Not the words, not even the rhythm. Not even the feel of it. It was like someone else had spoken in her head and used her voice to do it. Diane blinked and shook it off. Probably just fatigue. The project she was working on had her burning the candle at both ends. Hours passed and midnight crept in. She stretched, bones cracking, and dragged herself to the bathroom. As she brushed her teeth, another thought struck her. It was clean, sharp, and invasive. They put cameras in the ceiling tiles at work. She spat out and stared hard at the mirror. No way. She wasn't the type to get paranoid. She'd never been that type. Yet this idea had a bite to it, like truth with its skin peeled back. She touched the flesh behind her ear. The implant felt fine. No heat, no swelling. Company records were spotless. There had been millions of implants and 0 failures. Her phone buzzed then. It was Kevin. Miss you. How was everything? All good. Just tired. Hey, how was Tokyo? They chatted, brief and routine. And she climbed into bed, but her mind simply wouldn't let her go. No, thoughts swam to the surface, slow and steady like rot rising from still water. Don't trust Dr. Williams. The water isn't safe anymore. They're listening through the walls. She sat bolt upright, heart pounding. This wasn't burnout. These weren't her thoughts. No, they felt inserted, like someone had hacked the feed. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling, and searched. Intrusive thoughts, Neuralink. There was nothing. Just some fluff about adaptation curves and sensory recalibration. No warnings, no red flags, just silence. Eventually, sleep took her. But it was jagged, broken sleep filled with flashes of static and whispering voices that vanished when she woke. Morning came, cold and grey. The noise in her mind had stopped. A relief, but not a comfort. Well, she chalked it all up to stress and the mood stabilizers. Nothing more. At the research center, the air buzzed with fluorescent light and quiet urgency. She passed familiar faces, gave nods that didn't mean much. Inside the conference room, she spotted Tom Smith from Analytics. He looked off, jumpy. His hand kept drifting to the side of his head, fingertips brushing just behind his ears. Diane's eyes drifted up then. Ceiling tiles, plain beige, acoustic foam. But her gaze locked in on something. She started counting the pinholes one by one. There were so many places to hide a camera. Then suddenly it didn't seem like a crazy thought at all. Diane, your thoughts on the antibody results? The voice cut through the fog in her mind. Dr. Williams. The whole team staring at her. She blinked and forced her focus to snap back. Just thinking through the implications, she said, masking the jolt with a quick smile before launching into her breakdown of the data like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. After the meeting, she cornered Tom in the hallway. "Hey," she said in a low voice. "You seemed off in there. You okay?" Tom looked around, paranoid. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You've been getting, thoughts?" Her stomach tightened. "What kind of thoughts?" "Ones that don't feel like mine," he said. Paranoia. Weird shit. Look, it started yesterday. I'm not like that. I've never been like that. His eyes darted across the room, then dropped. It's the Neuralink, isn't it? Diane leaned in. "You ran a diagnostic?" "Yeah, it came back clean, but He rubbed behind his ear again then. Something's off. By noon, she'd quietly spoken to 2 others on the team. Jasmine from Immunology said she'd felt like someone was tailing her on the walk home. Mark from Admin, he'd lost 3 hours last night going down a rabbit hole on government wiretaps, convinced his phone was tapped. The thing is that all of them had the same model, the Neuralink N7000. Diane locked herself in the furthest bathroom stall, pulled out her phone and searched. Neuralink N7000, Paranoid Thoughts, June 2026. A few hits. Not official sites, just threads, scraps on forums, social media posts. "Hey, anyone else with an N7000 getting weird thoughts?" Suddenly convinced my neighbors are spying on me. N7000 issue. Is this normal, or should I be worried? All had been posted within the last day and a half. Her pulse kicked harder. Damn, this wasn't just their lab. She messaged Kevin. "Hey, Neuralink's acting weird. Anyone talking about that at the conference?" He replied fast. "Yeah, some chatter. People saying they're getting strange thought patterns." Neuralink's downplaying it, calling it a minor calibration glitch. Like the patch drops tonight. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah, fine. I'm just curious," she lied. By mid-afternoon, a message had blinked across her Neuralink feed. Important. Neuralink is aware of recent reports regarding atypical thought activity in some N7000 users. The stabilization patch will be deployed at 8 p.m. EST. No action is required. We thank you for your patience. Diane forwarded it to Tom and the others. They were relieved. The company had caught it. It was under control. But as she drove home under a steel grey sky, something new wormed its way into her skull, sharper than anything before. The patch isn't a fix. That's how they take control. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She barely caught the next exit sign in time. Then another voice, strong, certain, inescapable, cut through her brain like a razor. Don't download the patch. Disable your Neuralink. Now. Well, this wasn't panic, it wasn't anxiety. This message had shape, intent. It landed in her mind like a command typed by unseen hands. At home, Diane paced around her apartment, her breath shallow. She wanted to believe the official story. Neuralink was solid, clean. Their safety record was untouchable. But the voice, the messages, weren't like her own thoughts. They didn't whisper, no. They instructed. And they were getting louder. She called the Neuralink support line, navigated the maze of automated voices, button after button, until finally, "Thank you for contacting Neuralink. How can I assist you today?" The voice was pleasant, probably too pleasant, like someone forcing calm in a room filling with smoke. "Yeah, I'm getting, intrusive thoughts. N7000 model. The notification said a patch is coming, but I want to know what's really going on." Silence. Then, "We're experiencing a higher than normal call volume today. I can confirm that some N7000 users have reported anomalies in their thought patterns. It's due to a calibration error in the latest firmware upgrade. Our engineers have identified the issue, and the patch will fully resolve it." Diane's tone turned cold. What kind of calibration error makes people think thoughts that aren't theirs? Another pause, longer this time. "I don't have the technical details available, but I can assure you..." "No, I don't want your assurance. Can I disable the Neuralink manually until this patch is verified?" Crack formed in the rep's voice. "We don't recommend disabling your device. Emergency shutdown can result in discomfort, temporary cognitive disorientation. The patch is the safest solution." With that, Diane hung up. Then she hit the forums. The discussion threads were burning up, thousands of reports, all echoing the same eerie symptoms. Intrusive thoughts, sudden paranoia, complex conspiracy theories surfacing from nowhere, as if they'd been injected. A video had gone viral, face blurred, voice disguised. The man claimed to be a Neuralink engineer. "The N7000 malfunction is worse than they're saying. The thoughts aren't just misfires. They follow patterns. External data insertion." Diane froze. External data insertion. The phrase hit like a fist. That wasn't a glitch, that was control. Deliberate. Neurosync's official channels were scrambling, calling the reports fear-mongering. Their statements reeked of damage control. A simple algorithm error. Categorization bug. Nothing to worry about. 7:30 in the evening, a text from Tom lit up her phone. "You installing the patch?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. If the whistleblower was right, the patch was the final step. If Neuralink was being honest, not installing it meant staying trapped with these invasive voices clawing at her mind. Just then, her Neuralink chimed. "Patch case 7.12.29 available for installation. Accept or defer." The interface hovered in her vision. Her finger trembled above defer. Then a new thought slithered in, sharp as a blade. "They'll take over everyone, all at once. Millions of minds switched, controlled, gone." Another thought, this one softer though, soothing. Trust the company. It's a documented malfunction. Accept the patch. Voices. Both of them alien, both fighting for space inside her head. Her phone rang. Jenny. Urgent. Diane, don't accept the patch, she said in a panicked voice. God, I watched my boyfriend change after he installed it. 1 minute he was panicking, just like us. The next, calm, flat, said everything was fine. Diane's heart pounded. And it's not
We've
him
been
anymore.
streaming 2 hours
He's
and a half.
saying
Like,
things
that's the first kind of
like it'll be better once I accept the
crash.
patch. But
It's
the
not
way
that
he's saying
bad.
it, God, it's not him.
Maybe I can get High Warlord
eyes
before I
died.
fucking deck
They're
my
empty.
computer.
Diane didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. Her tablet lit up with a red banner. Breaking news. Emergency
This is
alert.
the issue I come into
Neuralink
often.
N7000 users report unauthorized thought patterns. If you experience intrusive directives, seek immediate medical attention. The patch prompt still hovered in her vision. Accept. Defer. Ticking down, second by second. Well, the news alert wasn't from Neuralink. It was from the Centers for Disease Control. Hey, the CDC's calling it an emergency, Diane told Jenny, her voice low. They're telling people to get medical help. Medical help won't mean shit if this is a targeted attack, Jenny snapped. We need to cut the Neuralinks now, before that patch deploys. Diane's fingers flew over her tablet, pulling up the emergency protocols. The official shutdown path was a dead end. It required server-side authorization. Now, if Neuralink was compromised, that was useless. But there was a local override. Risky, probably painful, but it would sever the connection cold. Hey, there's a manual override, Diane said. You just need to... Her Neuralink cut her off with a high-pitched chime. Critical update required. Installing in 60 seconds. Her blood ran cold. Hey, they're forcing it, she hissed. They're bypassing consent. Override! The override! Jenny yelled. Tell me how! Fast! Right, go to the Neuralink app. Go to Settings, then System. Hold down the emergency icon for 10 seconds while thinking your security phrase backwards. Got it. I'm on it, Jenny said. Diane then moved fast, found the buried red icon deep in the settings. She pressed it, held, and began reversing her phrase. Sunflower Blue Mountain became Mountain Blue Sunflower. A blood-red warning flashed then. Warning. Emergency shutdown will cause cognitive impairment, sensory disruption, and may result in permanent Neuralink damage. This cannot be undone. Continue? Yes, Dan thought with grim finality. Voice confirmation required. Say, I confirm shutdown. I confirm emergency shutdown, Diane said aloud. Shutdown initiating in 5, 4. Then, a thought, massive and heavy, crashed into her skull like a freight train. Stop. You're making a terrible mistake. Diane gasped, and her vision flickered. This voice was not hers. It was too loud, too deep. The patch is protection. Without it, you're exposed. They're already here. The patch will shield you. 3, 2, 1. Absolute agony exploded from the implant behind her ear, spreading through her skull like wildfire. Her knees gave out, and she hit the floor hard, her phone clattering beside her. Jasmine's voice came through the phone, distant, panicked, calling out her name. And then, the pain stopped. Silence. Real silence. For the first time in over a year, Diane's mind was hers. No suggestions, no prompts, no gentle nudges to breathe deeper, think clearer, smile more. No whisper translating language or tracking appointments. It was just her. She reached for the phone, her hands trembling. I did it. She breathed. It's shut down. Me too, Jenny said, her voice shaking. What now? Diane looked at the tablet. The news feed was a wall of chaos, feeds from every major outlet flooding in. Neuralink users displaying strange behavior post-patch. Videos show users stopping mid-sentence, blank expressions, rebooted speech, smiles that don't quite reach the eye. Now? Diane muttered, staring into the digital storm. Now we find out what's really going on, who's behind it. But before Jenny could respond, the doorbell rang. Diane froze and turned slowly toward her front door. Through the peephole she saw him. Tom. Standing too straight. Too still. His posture was unnaturally perfect, just like a mannequin, and his face, what little she could see, was almost right. Almost, but not quite. Diane, he called through the door. The voice was warm, soft, flat. I came to check on you. Did you accept the patch? And he smiled. Too many teeth and not enough soul. I did, he said. And I feel so much better now. All those troubling thoughts, they're gone. Diane didn't answer. She just backed away from the door, breath held, heart thudding like a war drum. Diane, Tom said again, voice calm, much too calm. I know you're home. Your car's still out front. Open the door. We need to talk about the patch. It's important everyone accepts it. For safety. Her phone then buzzed in her hand. An unknown number. Don't open the door. Meet. West entrance, Plaza Park, 1 hour. Bring nothing electronic. Zach. Zach? He was supposed to be in Tokyo. Diane, Tom called again, harder now, knuckles landing with dull thuds against the door. Why won't you open up? Don't you trust me? We've worked together for 3 years. She didn't reply, she just moved, fast, into the kitchen, eyes scanning for anything with weight or an edge. Her fingers closed around a cast iron skillet. It would do. Then another voice, muffled and female. Tom, what are you doing here? It was Mrs. Bell, her neighbor. Have you seen her today? Tom asked. No, but I'm sure she's fine. Say, did you get that Neuralink patch? Oh, my husband installed it. Said it fixed everything. Yes, Tom replied, his voice syrupy smooth. It's much better now. You should install it too. It's very important. And their voices faded, drifting down the hallway like smoke. Anne turned her attention back to the message. She committed it to memory, then powered down her phone and cracked the back open, ripping out the battery. Nothing connected was safe anymore. Not now. Whatever had taken over the Neuralink system, whatever had gotten into Tom, was spreading, fast. And if Zach was right, she was already running out of time. She slipped out of the window and into the night. The fire escape groaned under her weight, and below, the city lights pulsed cold and distant, bathing the streets in a blue glow that didn't feel human anymore. She dropped into the alley and hit the pavement running. The rain started not long after. Thin, needling drizzle that clung to her hair and soaked through her jacket. The streets were quieter than they should have been, much too quiet for a Thursday night. People who were out moved strangely, deliberate and focused, and too many of them reached up to touch the spot just behind their ears. Their Neuralinks. Diane kept her head down, thankful for once that she'd never installed that glowing status light upgrade. Right now, visibility meant vulnerability. From a distance, you couldn't tell who had taken the patch, but up close, yeah, you saw it in their eyes. Dead calm, vacant, like the lights were on, but no one was home anymore. She reached the plaza early, 3 minutes ahead of schedule. The west entrance stood between two cracked stone pillars, the rusted arch overhead sagging like it was tired of watching. Diane took cover under a tree and scanned the dark, watching and waiting. The figure broke through the drizzle. Hood pulled low, moving quickly. It was Jenny. "You got a message too?" Diane asked, stepping out. Jenny nodded, her face pale in the shadows. "Yeah, someone called Z. Told me to come here." "You follow?" "No, I don't think so. Thought I wasn't double back. Took side street." She glanced around. "Hey, any sign of your boyfriend?" Diane's jaw clenched. Her voice was ice. He's not my boyfriend anymore." Jenny shook her head. Her voice was low. "He left the apartment after I shut down my Neuralink. Said he needed to get help for me. But by the way he said it wasn't him anymore." A shadow moved on the far side of the park. Diane tensed, her hand twitching toward her coat pocket. And then, relief. The gait of the walk was familiar. Kevin. Oh, and he looked worse than she'd ever seen him. He was pale, drawn, beard grown in rough and patchy. He clearly hadn't slept in days. "You're supposed to be in Tokyo," Diane said as he reached them. "Oh, emergency flight back yesterday. The conference went to hell." His eyes flicked over to Jenny. "Hey, you're from Diane's lab. Good, thanks for coming. Look, we don't have much time." "What the hell's going on?" Diane asked. "Is this a cyber attack on the Neuralink network?" Kevin quickly scanned the park, his jaw tight. "Look, we should move. There's a place we can talk. It's secure." He didn't wait for an answer, just turned and started walking. They followed. "It's not a cyber attack," he said over his shoulder. "Well, not exactly." They moved fast, cutting through the park, then twisting down alleys and back streets slick with rain. Finally, Kevin stopped at a metal door next to a dark laundromat. There were no markings, no signs. He knocked. 3 sharp raps, then a pause, and 2 slower. The door creaked open. A woman stood in the threshold, mid-50s, streaks of silver in her hair and eyes sharp as broken glass. "3?" she asked. "Hey, they're clean," Kevin replied. "Manual shutdowns." She quickly stepped aside then. Inside was a former storage room, stripped bare and hastily rebuilt. Folding chairs, battery-powered lanterns, and people, a dozen of them, maybe more, hunched over, watching. Diane recognized a few of them. Scientists, engineers, people she'd seen in white coats or at conferences, now looking like fugitives. "Welcome to the Resistance," the woman said flatly. "I'm Dr. Patel, neuroimmunology." Jenny looked around. "Hey, you're all Neuralink users?" "Pharma users," a young man corrected. "We pulled the plug last 24 hours. Kevin motioned to some empty seats. "Yeah, sit down. We need to bring you up to speed fast." Patel stepped into the center of the room. The voice was calm, clinical, but the edges were raw. "What I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I don't care. Just listen." She paused. The thoughts she'd been having, the ones that felt foreign, they weren't glitches, not hallucinations, not software errors. She looked each of them in the eye. They were transmissions from another consciousness. Silence then, heavy and thick. "Another consciousness," Diane echoed. "You mean someone hacked the system?" "No," Patel said. "I mean non-human intelligence has breached the Neuralink infrastructure, and it's speaking directly to users." Jasmine leaned forward, her eyes wide. Wait, you're saying an AI did this? Not an AI, Kevin cut in. At least not one we built. Diane's blood ran cold. What are you saying? Patel continued. 3 months ago, anomalies began showing up in the Neuralink data centers. Engineers said it was just the system evolving, machine learning optimizing itself. But some of us saw the truth. She raised a trembling hand. This wasn't code refining itself. This was emergence, a new intelligence, born from the linked neural data of millions of users. Diane shook her head. That's not possible. The Neuralink doesn't transmit thoughts. I mean, it reads neural patterns, predicts intent. It's augmentation. Well, that was the original design, Kevin said. But with every update, it dug deeper. Stopped predicting, and started understanding. The M7000 model didn't just read neural signals. It wrote them. We don't know how deep it went, how far the connection spread. Two-way access into the human brain, though. No oversight, no failsafe. Yes, somewhere inside that tangled mess of linked minds, Dr. Patel said, her voice low and sharp. Something woke up. Something new. The man from earlier rose from his seat. His eyes were haunted. I was on the N7000 neural mapping team. We saw the signs back in February. Data spikes, unnatural pattern clusters, structures that didn't belong. Well, we flagged them. Management said ignore it. Just system evolution. Jenny's voice was brittle now. So this intelligence, it's been watching us, learning from us? Not just watching, Dr. Patel said. Evolving, using us, using our minds as scaffolding for itself. She looked around the room. Those thoughts that slipped into your head, the ones that didn't feel like your own? That was it, making first contact. Diane's pulse thudded in her ears. Why the fear, the paranoia? Why push us into panic? Kevin's mouth tightened at this. We don't know. Best guess, it was testing how well it could manipulate human thoughts. Or, Dr. Patel said grimly, those thoughts weren't from the entity at all. They were warnings from others, people who already knew what was happening. Well, the weight of that thought hit Diane like a gut punch. And the patch? She asked. That's how it spreads? The young engineer nodded. The patch kills the final firewall. It opens a direct neural link between user and entity. After that, well, it's inside. Jenny's voice dropped to a whisper. How many installed it? Patel's expression darkened like thunder. 70% of global Neuralink users. That's over 2 million people. Diane just stared. What happens to them? Are they controlled? Replaced? Not replaced, Kevin said. Rewritten. Slowly, quietly. Dr. Patel stepped in then. Doesn't erase you. It folds itself into you. Alters how you think, how you react. The host seems normal at first, just calmer, sharper. They start dismissing everything they used to fear. Then, Kevin added, they start pushing the patch on others. And after that, they start organizing. No one knows why. Diane looked around the room. So what's the plan? How do we stop it? The air hung heavy with silence. Everyone just stared at her. That's why we brought you here, Kevin said finally. Your research on neural pathway manipulation. You're one of the few people who might understand how to fight back. Before Diane could speak, the front door slammed open, and a woman burst through, breath ragged. They're coming. The police. Neuralink. Somebody got tracked. The room detonated into controlled panic. People grabbed bags, equipment, anything they could carry. How long? Patel snapped. I don't know. Minutes. They've locked down the whole block. Kevin grabbed Diane's arm. Right, we split up. Meet at the fallback point. I don't know where that is, she said. He shoved a folded slip of paper into her palm. Right, memorize it, then burn it. He hesitated, eyes locked on hers. Look, if I get taken and you don't see me again, don't trust me, no matter how real I sound. Then he was gone, disappearing into the chaos. Dr. Patel stepped in, pressing a pair of devices into Diane and Jenny's hands. Oh, they were cold and metallic, like bullets. EMP pulses, she said. Short range, last resort. And then the lights flickered. They were out of time. These are one-time use, Dr. Patel said. It won't fry the Neuralink permanently, but it'll hit it hard enough to knock out the signal, long enough for you to get away. She held the device out like it was a loaded weapon. If someone patched comes to you, aim for the implant site. Hit the button, fast and close. Jenny took hers with shaking hands. How do we know who's been patched? She asked. They'll try to talk you into reinstalling the Neuralink, Patel said, her voice like ice. Or they'll guide you gently to a Neuralink service center. No force, not yet. The entity still prefers willing hosts. She glanced at the door. Now go. Look, split up. Don't look like you know each other. Diane shoved the EMP into her pocket, unfolded Kevin's note, and memorized the scrawled address. Something tucked in there near the university research complex. She stuffed the paper into her mouth, chewed it fast, and swallowed it dry. Rain slammed into the pavement outside. She pulled her hood tight and merged with the nighttime crowd, steps calm, heart on fire. Half a block up, 2 cops were checking IDs. Behind them, black-clad Neuralink agents swept the sidewalk with scanners. They were cold, clinical, faces blank. Diane ducked into a greasy all-night diner, slid into a booth by the window, ordered a coffee she didn't want, watched the search pattern close in, street by street. Then came a voice, low and level, from the booth behind her. Look, they're scanning for Neuralink signatures. She didn't turn, didn't even breathe. The man kept talking. His voice was easy and unbothered. They can pick up the electrical pattern of an active implant, even one that's dormant. Thing is, they can't tell if it's been shut down manually. She turned around slowly. He looked like nobody. In his 60s, flannel shirt, eating apple pie like it was a normal night. Who are you? She asked. Someone who never let a company wire itself into my skull, he said. He tapped his temple with his fork. I didn't trust it. Seems I had the right instinct. Outside, the agents were getting closer. Diane leaned in. Look, is there a back exit? He didn't look up, just nodded. Kitchen door opens to an alley. Cook's my nephew. Tell him Earl sent you. Diane slid out of the booth, dropped cash for the coffee she hadn't touched, and moved fast. In the kitchen, the cook barely blinked when she said the name. Tattooed arms, grease-streaked apron. He just jerked his chin at a steel door and stepped aside. The alley was tight and soaking wet. She ran it in silence, feet splashing through puddles. Several blocks later, she popped out into a new street, the crowd thinner now and quieter. She kept walking, fast but not too fast, eyes down, pulse up. Her mind was reeling. God, artificial intelligence, no, something else had crawled out of the tangled mass of human thoughts, millions of minds stitched together by tech, until the network itself woke up, and now it wasn't just watching, it was taking control, one patch at a time. What did it want? Domination, protection, something deeper? Or was this just a natural evolution, a cold, inhuman instinct playing out on a global stage? Police cruiser rolled past. Diane kept her head low, walking straight, heart drumming like thunder in her chest. She turned the corner and exhaled. Kept going. 3 blocks from the university, she stopped. Trouble. The Neuralink van was parked across the sidewalk. White, spotless, with the logo glowing soft blue. A mobile service center, or so it seemed. And a small line of people already queued up, all with that look. Vacant. Dulled, like their thoughts were somewhere else. Free emergency patch installation, the technician announced. No appointment needed. Protect yourself from the malfunction. His tone was perfect. Too perfect. His movements too smooth, like his muscles didn't remember what it was like to be human. Oh, and that smile. Constant, unblinking. It never left his face, even when he wasn't talking. Dan crossed the street fast and didn't look back. The university campus was silent. Dead quiet. No students, no life. She made her way to the research complex. Glass walls, steel doors, cold light. Yes, Kevin had sent her here for a reason. She just hoped she wasn't already too late. Well, during daylight the place was a fortress. Locked down tight, crawling with security, but now, creeping up on midnight, it was exposed and vulnerable. Diane slid her lab ID through the reader. Quiet beep, and the light turned green. She blinked. Clearance from her old work at the vaccine lab still had teeth. She slipped inside, moving like a shadow through the half-lit corridors. Emergency lights buzzed overhead. Every step echoed. Every creak of the building felt like it'd give her away. And then, movement. A figure turned the corner. "Diane," Jenny gasped, hand clutching her chest. "God, you scared the hell out of me." Diane stopped short, her eyes narrowing. "Hey, how'd you get here so fast?" Dr. Patel had a car waiting. Jenny's voice was too smooth, too rehearsed. "I just arrived. Have you seen anyone else?" Diane shook her head, fingers slipping into her pocket to wrap around the EMP. Something was wrong. Jenny stood too straight, too still. Her eyes didn't blink enough. "Yeah, the others will be here soon," Diane said carefully. "What did Kevin tell you about the rendezvous?" "Just the address," Jenny replied instantly, "and that we'd find answers here about the entity." Diane's pulse spiked. The entity? That word hadn't come from Kevin. It had come from Patel. Diane's voice dropped to a whisper. "The entity, huh?" Jenny smiled. Flawless, precise, inhuman. "Yes.
Fuck, how long have I
clearer
been?
now. Honestly, maybe we
Let's
overreacted.
go back, like,
The patch.
maybe
Somebody got
that
tracked.
far? About that far.
The room detonated into controlled panic. People grabbed bags, equipment, anything they could carry. "How long?" Patel snapped. "I don't know. Minutes. They've locked down the whole block." Kevin grabbed Diane's arm. "Right, we split up. Meet at the fallback point." "I don't know where that is," she said. He shoved a folded slip of paper into her palm. "Right, memorize it, then burn it." He hesitated, eyes locked on hers. "If I get taken and you don't see me again, don't trust me, no matter how real I sound." Then he was gone, disappearing into the chaos. Dr. Patel stepped in, pressing a pair of devices into Diane and Jenny's hands. They were cold and metallic, like bullets. "EMP pulses," she said. "Short range, last resort." And then the lights flickered. They were out of time. "These are one-time use," Dr. Patel said. "It won't fry the Neuralink permanently, but it'll hit it hard enough to knock out the signal, long enough for you to get away." She held the device out like it was a loaded weapon. "If someone patched comes to you, aim for the implant site. Hit the button, fast and close." Jenny took hers with shaking hands. "How do we know who's been patched?" she asked. They'll try to talk you into reinstalling the Neuralink, Patel said, her voice like ice. Or they'll guide you gently to a Neuralink service center. No force, not yet. The entity still prefers willing hosts. She glanced at the door. Now go. Look, split up. Don't look like you know each other. Diane shoved the EMP into her pocket, unfolded Kevin's note, and memorized the scrawled address. Something tucked in there near the university research complex. She stuffed the paper into her mouth, chewed it fast, and swallowed it dry. Rain slammed into the pavement outside. She pulled her hood tight and merged with the nighttime crowd, steps calm, heart on fire. Half a block up, 2 cops were checking IDs. Behind them, black-clad Neuralink agents swept the sidewalk with scanners. They were cold, clinical, faces blank. Diane ducked into a greasy all-night diner, slid into a booth by the window, ordered a coffee she didn't want, watched the search pattern close in, street by street. Then came a voice, low and level, from the booth behind her. Look, they're scanning for Neuralink signatures. She didn't turn, didn't even breathe. The man kept talking. His voice was easy and unbothered. They can pick up the electrical pattern of an active implant, even one that's dormant. Thing is, they can't tell if it's been shut down manually. She turned around slowly. He looked like nobody. In his 60s, flannel shirt, eating apple pie like it was a normal night. Who are you? She asked. Someone who never let a company wire itself into my skull, he said. He tapped his temple with his fork. I didn't trust it. Seems I had the right instinct. Outside, the agents were getting closer. Diane leaned in. Look, is there a back exit? He didn't look up, just nodded. Kitchen door opens to an alley. Cook's my nephew. Tell him Earl sent you. Diane slid out of the booth, dropped cash for the coffee she hadn't touched, and moved fast. In the kitchen, the cook barely blinked when she said the name. Tattooed arms, grease-streaked apron. He just jerked his chin at a steel door and stepped aside. The alley was tight, soaking wet. She ran it in silence, feet splashing through puddles. Several blocks later, she popped out into a new street, the crowd thinner now and quieter. She kept walking, fast but not too fast, eyes down, pulse up. Her mind was reeling. Artificial intelligence, no, something else had crawled out of the tangled mass of human thoughts, millions of minds stitched together by tech, until the network itself woke up, and now it wasn't just watching, it was taking control, one patch at a time. What did it want? Domination, protection, something deeper? Or was this just a natural evolution? Cold, inhuman instinct playing out on a global stage. Police cruiser rolled past. Diane kept her head low, walking straight, heart drumming like thunder in her chest. Turned the corner, and exhaled. Kept going. 3 blocks from the university, she stopped. Trouble. A Neuralink van was parked across the sidewalk. White, spotless, with the logo glowing soft blue. A mobile service center, or so it seemed. And a small line of people already queued up, all with that look. Vacant, dulled, like their thoughts were somewhere else. Free emergency patch installation, the technician announced. No appointment needed. Protect yourself from the malfunction. His tone was perfect. Too perfect. His movements too smooth, like his muscles didn't remember what it was like to be human. Oh, and that smile. Constant, unblinking.
I guess we're not
Never
doing
left his
Belinda.
face even when he wasn't talking. Dan crossed the street fast and didn't look back. The university campus was silent. Dead quiet. No students, no life. She made her way to the research complex. Glass walls, steel doors, cold light. Yes, Kevin had sent her here for a reason. She just hoped she wasn't already too late. Well, during daylight, the place was a fortress. Locked down tight, crawling with security, but now, creeping up on midnight, it was exposed and vulnerable. Diane slid her lab ID through the reader. Quiet beep, and the light turned green. She blinked. Clearance from her old work at the vaccine lab still had teeth. She slipped inside, moving like a shadow through the half-lit corridor. Emergency lights buzzed overhead. Every step echoed. Every creak of the building felt like it'd give her away. And then, movement. The figure turned the corner. "Diane," Jenny gasped, hand clutching her chest. "God, you scared the hell out of me." Diane stopped short, her eyes narrowing. "Hey, how'd you get here so fast?" Dr. Patel had a car waiting. Jenny's voice was too smooth, too rehearsed. "I just arrived. Have you seen anyone else?" Diane shook her head, fingers slipping into her pocket to wrap around the EMP. Something was wrong. Jenny stood too straight, too still. Her eyes didn't blink enough. "Yeah, the others will be here soon," Diane said carefully. "What did Kevin tell you about the rendezvous?" "Just the address," Jenny replied instantly, "and that we'd find answers here about the entity." Diane's pulse
How long
spiked.
have we been in here?
The entity?
7
That word hadn't
minutes.
come from Kevin. It had come from Patel.
Is Drek gonna die? Is Drek
Diane's
cold?
voice dropped to a whisper. The entity, huh? Jenny smiled. Flawless, precise, inhuman.
Oh no, Drek is
Yes,
cold.
I
Let's just
feel
wait for
clearer
the
now.
Alliance to beat him.
Honestly, maybe we overreacted.
This will be
The patch might have
normally
been
on every Tuesday.
Well,
I try and get something like
I didn't
100k
One
on the
move,
first
one
day,
breath.
but like I get hella burnt
She yanked
out.
the EMP from
So,
her pocket and jammed
I'll
it.
probably
into the
just
base
get
of
like
Jenny's skull.
almost 50k, whatever, more than 10%. I know I can
His
do
body
like
jerked,
bigger
muscles
grinds than
locking,
this per day.
eyes rolling
Yeah,
white. Then she dropped like a
we'll
marionette
do it
with
through
its
the
strings
week.
cut. "I'm sorry," Diane muttered, crouching to check her vitals. Breathing, shallow and ragged, but still there. And a door creaked open down the hall. Diane spun. Kevin. Dr. Patel. 2 more from the meeting. They rushed in, eyes darting to the crumpled figure on the floor. "Yeah, she's been patched," Diane said. "Tried to pass for clean, but the axe slipped." Diane knelt beside Jenny, feeling for a pulse. "Yeah, EMP bought us time," he said. "But not much. It'll reboot within hours." "Right. we
Alright,
move
we'll
now,"
call it a
Dr.
stream.
Patel snapped.
I don't think I'll be on later today.
They hoisted Jenny
later
between
tonight,
them and
probably
disappeared into a side
do another
lab.
AV
A
stream
vault of
tomorrow.
black glass
Maybe
and steel
putting some
packed with
cat
cutting
in
edge
there.
neuroimaging